The bullet left the barrel at 2,847 feet per second. Staff Sergeant Elena Reyes exhaled slowly, feeling the familiar kick against her shoulder as the Barrett M82 recoiled against the sandbag rest. 3,050 meters away, through swirling dust and 100-degree heat that created mirages across the Afghan valley, the target dropped. For 3 seconds, absolute silence fell across the observation deck at Forward Operating Base Chapman. Then came the laughter. Major Derek Cassidy was the first to speak, his voice carrying across the platform where a dozen Marines had gathered to watch the qualification shoot. "That was luck," he announced to no one in particular. "Pure luck. The wind had carried it. Had to be. No way a shot like that was intentional, especially not in these conditions." Elena kept her eye pressed to the scope, watching the spot where the target had fallen. Her spotter, Captain Sofia Martinez, sat beside her with the rangefinder still locked on the distance marker. Martinez turned slowly, her jaw tight. "The wind reading was exact," she said. "The holdover was calculated to the millimeter." "That was skill, sir, not luck." Cassidy stepped closer to the shooting position, his boots grinding sand against the concrete platform. He was a tall man, 6'3", with the kind of build that came from decades of fitness reports and mandatory PT. His shadow fell across Elena's rifle as he peered down at her. She remained still, her hands steady on the weapon, her breathing controlled. Gunnery Sergeant Travis Holbrook joined Cassidy at the platform edge, shaking his head with an exaggerated motion. "I have been shooting for 15 years, he said, "and I have never made a shot past 2,400 meters in combat conditions." No disrespect to the staff sergeant, but wind like this, heat like this, that distance in a sandstorm? Someone upstairs was looking out for her. Elena finally pulled back from the scope and sat up. She was 4'9" tall, and even sitting on the elevated platform, the men around her towered over her position. She had grown accustomed to this, had spent 6 years in the Marine Corps learning to ignore the stares, the comments, the assumptions. She began to break down her rifle with practiced efficiency, her small hands moving quickly across the weapon components. Martinez stood, her 5'10" frame putting her at eye level with most of the men on deck. She held up her data book, the pages filled with wind readings, temperature recordings, barometric pressure notes. Every variable was accounted for, she said. Staff Sergeant Reyes calculated the shot using the exact methodology taught at Scout Sniper School. The execution was flawless. Cassidy took the data book from Martinez's hands and flipped through the pages without really looking at them. His expression remained skeptical, his mouth set in a firm line. "The problem with data, Captain, is that it does not account for the human factor. Stress, fatigue, tunnel vision. A shooter can have all the calculations in the world and still miss by a mile. The fact that this shot connected tells me the conditions aligned in her favor. It happens, but it is not something you can replicate on demand." Before we continue with what happened next, drop a comment and let us know what state you are watching from. Maybe you have witnessed similar acts of courage where you are from. Elena secured the last piece of her disassembled rifle in its case and stood. At her full height, her eyes came level with Cassidy's chest. She looked up at him with an expression that gave nothing away. "With respect, sir," she said, "I can replicate it. The conditions are irrelevant. The math does not change because the wind is blowing or the heat is rising. The calculations work at any distance, in any weather, if you understand the variables." Cassidy smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Bold statement, Staff Sergeant. Very bold. Tell you what, since you are so confident, we will arrange a proper qualification shoot. Real combat scenario. Unknown distance, variable wind conditions, time pressure. We will see if that shot was skill or if the desert just smiled on you today." The other Marines on the observation deck shifted uncomfortably. Elena could feel their eyes on her, could sense the mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Martinez stepped closer to Elena's side, a subtle gesture of solidarity. "When would this qualification take place, sir?" Elena asked. Cassidy handed the data book back to Martinez without looking at her. 48 hours from now, he said. 0600 hours. That give you time to prepare, check your equipment, Pray to whoever you pray to. And, Staff Sergeant, make sure your rifle is zeroed properly. Luck only works once. He turned and walked away, Holbrook following behind him like a shadow. The other Marines dispersed slowly, their conversations low and speculative. Elena could hear fragments of their words as they left. Too small for that kind of shooting, one said. Probably just caught a lucky wind gust, said another. Martinez waited until they were alone on the platform before speaking. You do not have to prove anything to them, she said quietly. That shot was legitimate. I was there. I saw every calculation you made. Anyone with eyes could see it was not luck. Elena knelt beside her rifle case, running her fingers along the foam interior where each component rested in its designated space. Her father had taught her to shoot when she was 8 years old, had spent every weekend taking her to the range, teaching her to read wind, to calculate distance, to control her breathing. He had been a Marine Scout sniper, had served 3 tours in Iraq before the IED took him during his 4th deployment. She had been 16 when the notification officers came to their door in San Diego. I know it was not luck, Elena said, but they will never believe it unless I can do it again, and again, and again, until there is no doubt left. Martinez sat down on the sandbag rest, her expression troubled. Cassidy has it out for you. You know that, right? This is not about your shooting. This is about something else. Elena had noticed the way Cassidy looked at her, the particular edge in his voice whenever he addressed her directly. There was something personal in his contempt, something that went beyond the usual skepticism she faced as a woman in a combat specialty. But she had learned long ago that understanding why someone doubted you mattered less than proving them wrong. 48 hours, Elena said, closing the rifle case with a decisive click. That is plenty of time. She picked up the case and her gear bag, slinging both over her shoulders despite their combined weight being nearly a third of her body mass. Martinez grabbed the spotting scope and data books, and together they headed down from the observation platform toward the main compound. The afternoon sun beat down on forward operating base Chapman with relentless intensity. The base sprawled across a valley floor, surrounded by mountains that turned purple in the fading light. Guard towers marked the perimeter, and the constant hum of generators provided a baseline soundtrack to daily operations. Elena had been stationed here for 4 months, had made 17 confirmed kills at distances ranging from 800 to 2,100 meters. The 3,050-meter shot had been a new record, not just for her, but for the entire battalion. As they walked past the command building, a young private flagged them down. He was maybe 19, fresh-faced and nervous in a way that marked him as new to deployment. Staff Sergeant Reyes? He asked. I was wondering if you could help me with something. My rifle grouping has been off all week, and I have qualification coming up. Elena stopped, setting down her case. Show me your shooting position, she said. The private demonstrated his stance, and Elena immediately spotted 3 problems with his form. She spent the next 10 minutes walking him through corrections, explaining how small adjustments in shoulder placement and cheek weld could transform accuracy. The private listened with intense focus, nodding along, his notebook filling with scribbled notes. Thank you, Staff Sergeant, he said when they finished. I have been asking around all week, and nobody had time to help. Time is what we make it, Elena said. Come find me if you need more help before qualification. Martinez watched this exchange with a slight smile. They walked on toward the barracks, passing groups of Marines who stopped their conversations to watch Elena pass. She had grown used to being watched, used to the way silence followed her presence. That night, alone in her bunk, Elena pulled out a small wooden box from her footlocker. Inside was her father's Purple Heart, the medal still in its original presentation case. Beside it was a folded flag and a single photograph of him in dress blues, his sniper qualification badge gleaming on his chest. She held the Purple Heart in her palm, feeling its weight. Her father had told her once that being a Marine was not about being the biggest or the strongest. It was about being the most precise, the most disciplined, the most unwilling to quit. Size does not pull a trigger, he had said. Your mind pulls the trigger. Your discipline pulls the trigger. Everything else is just noise. Elena set the medal back in its case and closed the box. 48 hours until she would have to prove, once again, that her father had been right. She lay back on her bunk and began running calculations in her mind, imagining every possible wind condition, every temperature variable, every scenario Cassidy might throw at her. Sleep would come eventually, but first there was work to do. There was always work to do. The sun had not yet risen when Elena arrived at the shooting range the next morning. The air was still cool, carrying the last remnants of night across the valley. She set her rifle case down on the bench and began the ritual of assembly, her fingers moving with the muscle memory of thousands of repetitions. Each component clicked into place with satisfying precision. Martinez arrived 15 minutes later, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a weather station. She set 1 cup beside Elena and began setting up the equipment to measure wind speed, temperature, and humidity. The forecast calls for variable winds today, she said. Gusts up to 20 miles per hour by noon. Perfect conditions to practice the impossible. Elena pressed her eye to the scope and adjusted the parallax. The range extended out to 1,200 meters, marked with targets at 100-meter intervals. It was not nearly far enough to simulate the 50-meter shot, but it would serve for fundamentals. She loaded 5 rounds and settled into position. Before she could fire, footsteps approached from behind. Gunnery Sergeant Holbrook walked up to the shooting line with 3 other Marines. He carried a clipboard and wore an expression of barely concealed amusement. "Staff Sergeant Reyes," he said, "Major Cassidy wanted me to inform you of some adjustments to tomorrow's qualification parameters." Elena sat up from her rifle, waiting. Martinez's expression darkened. Holbrook consulted his clipboard. "The qualification will now include unknown distance estimation," he said. "You will not be given the range to target. You will have to calculate it yourself using your reticle and available reference points. Additionally, wind conditions must be determined without electronic measurement devices. No Kestrel, no weather station. Just your eyes and your experience." Martinez started to protest, but Elena raised a hand to stop her. "Understood, Gunnery Sergeant," Elena said. "Anything else?" Holbrook smiled. "Just one more thing. The Major wants to ensure this is a fair test of skill. So you will be using a rifle from our armory, not your personal weapon. We will assign you a rifle tomorrow morning, 1 hour before the shoot. You will have that hour to zero it and prepare." "That is completely unreasonable," Martinez said, her voice rising. "A sniper needs to know her weapon intimately. Switching rifles at the last minute compromises everything." "Those are the parameters, Captain," Holbrook said. "If Staff Sergeant Reyes is as skilled as she claims, the weapon should not matter. After all, the math does not change, right? Is that not what she said?" Elena stood, meeting Holbrook's eyes. "The weapon does not matter," she said quietly. "I will use whatever rifle you provide." Holbrook's smile widened. "Outstanding. We will see you tomorrow at 0500 then. Oh, and Staff Sergeant, word is spreading about your lucky shot. A lot of people are talking about it. Will be a shame if you could not back it up." He turned and left, his entourage following behind. When they were out of earshot, Martinez threw her pen down on the bench. "They're setting you up to fail. This is deliberate sabotage." Elena returned to her shooting position, settling back behind the rifle. "I know," she said, "which is why I need to be better than perfect." She fired the first shot, adjusting for the early morning wind that swept down from mountains. The round impacted 3 inches left of center at 800 meters. She made a mental note of the drift and prepared the second shot. Over the next 4 hours, Elena fired nearly 200 rounds, working through every possible wind condition, every angle, every variable she could simulate. Martinez recorded every shot, every adjustment, building a comprehensive data set. By mid-morning, when the heat began to create mirage effects across the range, Elena was hitting within a 2-inch group at 1,200 meters consistently. A voice called out from behind the range safety line. "That is some impressive shooting." Elena looked back to see an Afghan man in civilian clothes, his face weathered by years of sun and hardship. He wore a badge that identified him as Bashir Ahmadi, one of the local translators assigned to the base. She had seen him around the compound, but had never spoken with him directly. "Thank you," Elena said, standing and stretching her back. Bashir approached the shooting line, his hands clasped behind his back. "I heard about your long shot yesterday," he said. "The one in the sandstorm. People in the village are talking about it. They say a small American woman shot a target from impossible distance in weather that made old men stay inside." Elena was not sure how to respond to this. Martinez packed up the weather station, listening carefully. "In my country," Bashir continued, "we have a saying, the eagle does not prove its strength by fighting other eagles. It proves its strength by soaring where others cannot follow. I think maybe you understand this." Elena met his eyes and saw genuine respect there, free from the skepticism and doubt she had encountered from most of the Americans on base. "Thank you," she said. "That means more than you know." Bashir nodded. "Tomorrow, when you shoot again, the wind will come from the northwest in the morning. By midday, it will shift to the west. The old shepherds in the mountains, they watch these things. They know." He turned and walked away, leaving Elena and Martinez alone again. Martinez watched him go, then turned to Elena. "Did he just give you intelligence on tomorrow's wind conditions?" Elena smiled slightly, the first genuine smile she had allowed herself in days. "I think he just leveled the playing field." They spent the rest of the day on the range, shooting until Elena's shoulder ached from recoil and her fingers cramped from trigger pulls. When the sun finally began its descent toward the mountains, they packed up and headed back toward the main compound. In the mess hall that evening, Elena sat alone at a corner table with a tray of food she barely touched. The room hummed with conversation. Groups of Marines clustered together after a long day of operations. She could feel eyes on her, could hear her name mentioned in low tones from nearby tables. A lance corporal she did not recognize approached her table. He was young, maybe 22, with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he had been dared to make this approach. "Hey, Staff Sergeant," he said. "Some of the guys were wondering. That shot you made yesterday, was it really 3,050 meters?" Elena looked up at him. "According to the laser rangefinder, yes." "And you made it in a sandstorm? Like, actual reduced visibility conditions?" "The wind was gusting at 18 miles per hour with variable direction," Elena said. "Visibility was approximately 800 meters. Temperature was 104 degrees Fahrenheit, creating significant mirage effect." The lance corporal whistled low. "That is insane. I mean, that is like sniper legend type stuff." "It was math," Elena said. "Just math and discipline." The lance corporal nodded slowly, clearly wanted to say more, but unsure how. Finally, he just said, "Well, good luck tomorrow, Staff Sergeant. A lot of us are pulling for you." After he left, Martinez slid into the seat across from Elena. "You have allies here," she said. "More than you think. Not everyone believes Cassidy's narrative." Elena pushed her tray away, the food still mostly untouched. "It does not matter how many people believe in me," she said. "What matters is the shot. Everything else is noise." Martinez leaned forward, her voice dropping to just above a whisper. "I did some digging today. Called in a favor from a friend in personnel. You want to know why Cassidy has it out for you?" Elena's eyes sharpened with interest. "He was the commanding officer of a sniper team in Iraq," Martinez said. 2009, Fallujah. The team was providing overwatch for a convoy when they took contact. The sniper engaged targets, but his spotter gave him a bad wind call on a critical shot. The round missed and hit a civilian vehicle. 3 kids died. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. "The sniper's name was Sergeant Antonio Reyes," Martinez continued. "Your father." The mess hall noise seemed to fade away, becoming distant and muffled. Elena stared at Martinez, processing this information. "Cassidy was my father's commanding officer?" Martinez nodded. "The official investigation cleared your father. The wind call came from the spotter, who was new and inexperienced. But Cassidy took heat for the incident. It damaged his career trajectory. He never made lieutenant colonel. And apparently, he never forgave snipers for what happened, especially not ones named Reyes." Elena sat back in her chair, understanding flooding through her. This was not about her gender or her size or her skill. This was about a 20-year-old tragedy and a man who had never let go of his bitterness. You want me to fail, Elena said slowly. Not just fail. He wants to prove that snipers are unreliable. That long-range shooting is more luck than skill. That my father was responsible for those deaths. Which makes tomorrow even more important, Martinez said. Because if you succeed, you do not just prove yourself. You prove your father too. Elena stood, picking up her tray. She felt something shift inside her, a crystallization of purpose that went beyond personal pride. Tomorrow's shoot was not just about her anymore. It was about legacy, about honor, about settling a debt that her father had never deserved to carry. She walked back to her barracks in the gathering darkness, passing the memorial wall where names of fallen Marines were inscribed in metal plaques. Her father's name was not there because he had survived that deployment. He had come home, had spent 3 more years with his family before volunteering for one final tour. The IED that killed him had nothing to do with sniper work, nothing to do with Cassidy or Fallujah or tragic mistakes made in the chaos of combat. In her bunk that night, Elena opened the wooden box and took out her father's Purple Heart again. She held it up to the dim light, watching the colors shift across its surface. Tomorrow she would shoot for him, for every sniper who had ever been doubted, for every Marine who had ever been judged by their size rather than their skill. She set the metal down and closed her eyes. In her mind, she ran through the calculations one more time. Wind from the northwest, shifting to west. Unknown distance requiring estimation. Un familiar rifle requiring rapid zeroing. High-pressure situation with an audience waiting for failure. The math did not change. It never changed. And math, unlike luck, could be repeated endlessly. Elena woke at 0300 hours, 2 hours before she needed to report to the armory. Sleep had come in fragments, interrupted by dreams of windage calculations and bullet trajectories. She dressed in the darkness, her movements precise and economical, then headed to the range with a headlamp and her personal rifle. The night air was cold enough to make her breath visible. She set up at the 800-meter line and began dry firing, running through her breathing cycle over and over. The rifle would be different tomorrow, but the fundamentals would remain the same. Breath control, trigger squeeze, follow-throw. These things lived in muscle memory, independent of any particular weapon. Martinez found her there an hour later, still running drills in the pre-dawn darkness. You should be resting, she said. Elena lowered the rifle. I will rest after the shoot. Right now, I need to be ready. They walked together back toward the armory as the eastern sky began to lighten. Other Marines were starting to emerge from barracks, beginning their morning routines. Word had spread about the qualification shoot, and Elena could feel the weight of expectation in every glance that came her way. At the armory, Holbrook was waiting with a rifle case. He had the same smug expression he had worn the day before. Your weapon, Staff Sergeant, he said, handing her the case. Elena opened it and found a Barrett M82 that had clearly seen heavy use. The finish was worn in places, and when she pulled back the bolt, it moved with slightly more resistance than it should. This rifle had been fired thousands of times, probably by dozens of different shooters. She lifted it from the case and checked the scope mounting. The scope rings were loose. Martinez saw it immediately. Those need to be torqued properly, she said. That scope will shift under recoil. Holbrook shrugged. You have an hour to prepare the weapon however you see fit, he said. I suggest you use your time wisely. Elena carried the rifle to a maintenance bench and began working. She tightened the scope rings to proper torque specs, checked the barrel for obstructions, and examined every component she could access in the time available. The rifle was functional, but far from ideal. The trigger pull was heavier than she preferred, and there was play in the cheek rest that would make consistent head position difficult. 40 minutes into her preparation time, the firing pin spring gave her trouble during reassembly. It took 3 attempts to seat it properly, and each failed attempt cost precious minutes. By the time she had the rifle fully assembled, she had only 12 minutes left to zero it. She moved to the range and set up at the 100-meter line. The first shot hit 4 inches high and 2 inches right. She made adjustments and fired again. 3 inches high, 1 inch right. The scope was fighting her, the adjustments not tracking the way they should. She could feel frustration building, but pushed it down ruthlessly. Emotion was the enemy of precision. With 5 minutes remaining, she fired her final zeroing shot. It impacted half an inch from center. Not perfect, but it would have to do. Major Cassidy arrived at precisely 0600, accompanied by a crowd of at least 30 Marines. They spread out along the observation area, some sitting on sandbags, others standing with arms crossed. The atmosphere felt like a spectacle, like public judgment. Cassidy approached the shooting line where Elena waited with Martinez. "Good morning, Staff Sergeant," he said. "I trust you found the rifle satisfactory?" "It will serve its purpose, sir," Elena said. "Excellent," Cassidy said. "Then let me explain today's challenge." He gestured toward the valley beyond the range. Out there, at an unknown distance between 2,500 and 3,200 meters, we have placed a target. Your task is to estimate the range, calculate all necessary corrections, and make 5 shots. You must achieve at least 4 hits to pass this qualification. Martinez checked her rangefinder, but Cassidy held up a hand. "No electronic range-finding devices, Captain. Staff Sergeant Reyes must estimate distance using only her reticle and available reference points." Elena scanned the valley through her scope. The target was visible as a small rectangular shape on the far hillside. She could see scrub brush around it, a few rocks, the curve of the terrain. She began measuring in her mind, using the mil dots in her reticle to estimate size and therefore distance. The wind had picked up, blowing from a northwest exactly as Bashir had predicted. Elena held up her hand, feeling the air move across her palm. She watched dust devils swirl in the valley, noted how the heat shimmer was already forming despite the early hour. "Range estimation," she said after 2 minutes of observation, "is 2,840 meters based on target size correlation with known standard dimensions and reticle measurement." Cassidy made a note on his clipboard. "Proceed when ready." Elena settled into position, feeling the unfamiliar weight distribution of the borrowed rifle. The trigger pull was heavier than she wanted, requiring more pressure to break the shot. She compensated mentally, adjusting her expectations. The first shot felt clean as it left the barrel. Through the scope, she watched the vapor trail arc across the valley. The round impacted 2 feet low and 1 foot left of the target. Martinez made notes in the data book. "Wind picked up during flight," she said quietly. "At 0.3 mils left, 0.5 mils up." Elena made the adjustments and fired again. This round impacted 6 inches low, dead center for windage. "Closer." She adjusted elevation and fired the 3rd shot. Direct hit. The target marker shuddered from the impact. A murmur ran through the watching Marines. Elena heard someone say she actually did it, followed by another voice responding, "Wait until she tries the rest." The 4th shot hit 1 inch left of center. The 5th shot impacted high, clipping the top edge of the target. 4 hits out of 5. Cassidy walked forward to inspect the target through his spotting scope. After a long moment, he straightened. "For impacts confirmed," he said. His voice carried no enthusiasm, just flat acknowledgement. "Then I have passed the qualification," Elena said. "You have passed this qualification," Cassidy said. "But anyone can get lucky twice. Real combat does not give you 5 chances to dial in your solution. Real combat requires first-round hits under pressure." "With respect, sir," Elena said, "first-round hit probability at extended range depends on having proper equipment and adequate preparation time. You provided neither." Cassidy's jaw tightened. "Perhaps you are right, Staff Sergeant. Perhaps the conditions were not ideal. So let me offer you an opportunity to prove your skills under actual combat conditions." He pulled a radio from his belt and keyed it. "Overwatch, this is actual. Confirm status of target Amber." The radio crackled. "Target Amber, confirmed in position," came the response. "High-value individual, range 2,950 meters from observation post Phoenix. Awaiting clearance to engage." Cassidy looked at Elena. "We have a Taliban commander in the valley right now. He has been linked to 3 IED attacks against our patrols. Intel says he is meeting with weapons suppliers at a compound we have been watching for weeks. This is a legitimate combat target requiring immediate engagement. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. I'm assigning you as primary shooter, Staff Sergeant Reyes. Captain Martinez will accompany you to OP Phoenix. You will make positive identification and engage the target. If you're truly skilled, prove it when it actually matters. Martinez stepped forward. Sir, this is highly irregular. Staff Sergeant Reyes should be assigned with proper mission planning, and the target is mobile and will not remain in position indefinitely. Cassidy interrupted. We have a window of opportunity now. Either Staff Sergeant Reyes is capable of operational sniper work, or she is not. This is her chance to demonstrate which. Elena felt the eyes of every Marine on her. This was the trap, she realized. Either refuse and appear to lack confidence in her abilities, or accept and take a shot that could have real consequences. A shot where missing would not just mean a failed qualification, but could mean a target escaping, intelligence lost, future American casualties. I will take the shot, she said. Outstanding, Cassidy said. Transport is waiting. You have 15 minutes to reach OP Phoenix before the window closes. Elena grabbed her rifle and gear while Martinez scrambled to collect the spotting scope and data books. They ran to the waiting Humvee, where a driver sat with the engine already running. The vehicle lurched forward before Martinez had fully closed her door. The drive to observation post Phoenix took 8 minutes of rough terrain navigation. The observation post was a fortified position built into a hillside, offering clear sight lines across the valley. 2 Marines were already there, manning security positions. Elena set up her rifle on the sandbag rest and located the target compound through her scope. At 2,950 meters, the buildings appeared as small rectangles. She could see movement, figures moving between structures. Martinez called wind readings. 7 miles per hour, northwest. Temperature 87 degrees and rising. Barometric pressure 29.92. Elena made her calculations, adjusting for the distance, the wind, the temperature differential. She found the target figure, a man in dark clothing moving across an open courtyard. He stopped beside a vehicle, speaking with 2 other men. Positive identification required, Martinez said. Can you confirm target matches description? Elena studied the figure through her scope. Dark beard, white turban, scarred left cheek, visible even at this distance. He matched the intelligence photos perfectly. Positive ID confirmed, she said. Target is Amber. Her finger moved to the trigger. The borrowed rifle felt foreign in her hands. The trigger pull still heavier than she preferred. She controlled her breathing, watching the target through the scope. He was talking, gesturing with his hands, unaware that 3 kilometers away a 4'9" Marine had him centered in her crosshairs. She thought of her father, of Cassidy's bitterness, of the 3 children who had died in Fallujah because of a bad wind call. She thought of every person who had ever looked at her and seen only her size, never her skill. The math did not change. The fundamentals did not change. And 3,000 meters was just a number, just a calculation waiting to be solved. Elena exhaled slowly and began to squeeze the trigger. The recoil drove into Elena's shoulder as the rifle fired. She kept her eye pressed to the scope, watching the vapor trail arc across the valley floor. The bullet traveled for what felt like an eternity, crossing nearly 3 kilometers of air that shifted and swirled with invisible currents. The target dropped instantly, falling backward against the vehicle he had been standing beside. The 2 men with him scattered, running for cover inside the nearest building. Confirmed hit, Martinez said, her voice tight with tension. Target down, no movement. Elena maintained her position, scanning the compound for additional threats. The courtyard had emptied in seconds, leaving only the fallen figure beside the vehicle. She could see no signs of counter-sniper activity, no indication that anyone in the compound had identified their position. Martinez keyed her radio. Overwatch, this is Phoenix. Target Amber is down. Confirmed kill at 2,950 meters. Requesting guidance for exfil. The radio remained silent for a long moment. Then Cassidy's voice came through, flat and controlled. Confirmed, Phoenix. Stand by for extraction team. ETA 12 minutes. Elena finally pulled back from the scope, blinking against the bright morning sun. Her hands were steady, her breathing controlled, but she could feel adrenaline coursing through her system now that the shot was complete. She had just killed a man. Not a paper target, not a qualification standard, but a living human being who had been talking and gesturing and alive one moment and dead the next. Martinez touched her shoulder gently. "You did what needed to be done," she said quietly. "That man was responsible for killing Marines, for planting bombs that tore families apart. This was righteous work." Elena nodded, but said nothing. She began breaking down the rifle with mechanical precision, her mind still processing what had just happened. This was not her first combat kill. She had 17 confirmed eliminations over 4 months of deployment. But something about this one felt different, felt weighted with significance beyond the tactical necessity. The extraction Humvee arrived within 10 minutes. The ride back to Forward Operating Base Chapman was silent, except for the rumble of the engine and the crunch of tires on rough terrain. When they arrived at the main compound, a crowd had already gathered. Word traveled fast on military bases, and news of the successful engagement had clearly spread. Major Cassidy stood at the entrance to the operations center, his arms crossed over his chest. As Elena and Martinez dismounted from the Humvee, he approached them with measured steps. "Confirmed kill at 2,950 meters, he said. "Under combat conditions, with an unfamiliar weapon." "That was exceptional shooting, Staff Sergeant Reyes." Elena detected no warmth in the compliment, just acknowledgement of fact. "Thank you, sir." Cassidy's expression shifted slightly, something harder entering his eyes. "However, exceptional shooting under pressure is exactly what we should expect from our scout snipers. This is the standard, not the exception. Do you agree?" "Yes, sir," Elena said. "Good," Cassidy continued. "Because there seems to be a misconception spreading among the junior enlisted that your recent shots represent something extraordinary, that they represent skill beyond normal sniper capability. This creates unrealistic expectations, and frankly, it undermines the credibility of more experienced shooters who have been doing this work for years." Martinez's jaw clenched visibly. "Sir, with respect, 2 confirmed kills at distances exceeding 2,900 meters in adverse conditions is statistically exceptional by any measurement." Cassidy turned his attention to Martinez. "Statistics are meaningless without context, Captain." "Yes, the shots were long range. Yes, the conditions were challenging. But we do not hand out medals for doing the job we are trained to do. Staff Sergeant Reyes performed adequately under the circumstances she was given. Nothing more, nothing less." He looked back at Elena. "You are reassigned effective immediately. Report to supply operations at 1,400 hours. They need inventory management support, and you have the attention to detail required for the work." "Supply operations?" Martinez said, her voice rising. "Sir, Staff Sergeant Reyes is a qualified scout sniper with proven combat effectiveness. Reassigning her to supply is a waste of her capabilities. I determine how this unit's capabilities are utilized," Captain Cassidy said sharply. "Staff Sergeant Reyes has completed her assigned sniper tasks effectively. Now she will contribute to other operational needs. Are we clear?" Elena felt something cold settle in her chest. This was the real punishment, she realized. Not failure, but success followed by dismissal. Cassidy would acknowledge her skill just enough to avoid appearing unreasonable, then remove her from the role where that skill mattered. "Crystal clear, sir," she said. "Outstanding," Cassidy said. "Dismissed." He turned and walked away, leaving Elena and Martinez standing in the compound dust. Around them, the gathered Marines began to disperse, their conversations low and uncomfortable. "This is retaliation," Martinez said once they were alone. "Pure retaliation. You did everything he asked and more, and now he is punishing you for it." Elena shouldered her rifle case. "He is within his authority to make personnel assignments as he sees fit." "That does not make it right," Martinez said. Elena, You just eliminated a high-value target under combat conditions with borrowed equipment and minimal preparation time. You should be getting commended, not shuffled off to count MREs in a warehouse. What I should get and what I will get are two different things, Elena said quietly. They walked toward the barracks, neither speaking for several minutes. In the female barracks area, Martinez helped Elena stow her gear. The space was nearly empty during the day. Most of the other women assigned their working various posts around the base. Elena sat on her bunk and pulled off her boots, feeling exhaustion finally beginning to penetrate her focus. Martinez sat across from her. I'm going to file a complaint with the battalion commander. This reassignment is clearly prejudicial and do not, Elena interrupted. It will accomplish nothing except making Cassidy's position harder. He will just dig in deeper, and you will damage your own career in the process. So what? You just accept this? Martinez asked. You let him win? Elena looked at her friend, seeing the genuine anger and frustration there. Accepting a temporary setback is not the same as letting someone win. Cassidy wants me to react emotionally, to fight the reassignment, and prove his point that I am too volatile for sniper work. If I go quietly, if I perform supply duties with the same precision I bring to shooting, I deny him that satisfaction. Martinez shook her head. You are a better person than I am. If someone tried to sideline me like this after I had just proven myself, I would burn the whole system down. The system does not burn easily, Elena said, and usually the people trying to burn it just burn themselves instead. A knock on the doorframe made them both turn. Corporal James Davis stood there, young and uncertain, the same Private Elena had helped with his shooting stance days earlier. Staff Sergeant Reyes? He said, I am sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to thank you. Thank me for what? Elena asked. I passed my rifle qualification this morning, he said. Used everything you taught me about stance and breathing. Shot expert for the first time in my career. My platoon sergeant says I might get assigned to advanced marksmanship training. Elena felt a small warmth cut through the cold disappointment of the morning. That is outstanding, Corporal. You earned that through your own work. Maybe, Davis said, but you took time to teach me when nobody else would. That matters, Staff Sergeant. More than you probably know. After he left, Martinez looked at Elena with a slight smile. You see? That is impact that Cassidy cannot measure or reassign away. You changed that kid's trajectory with 15 minutes of your time. Elena lay back on her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Maybe Martinez was right. Maybe there were different kinds of impact, different ways to prove worth beyond long-range eliminations and combat decorations. But even as she tried to find comfort in that thought, she could not shake the feeling that Cassidy had won this round. He had forced her to prove herself, then discarded her the moment she succeeded. And unless something changed, unless some opportunity emerged to demonstrate her value beyond any doubt, she would spend the rest of her deployment counting supplies while her skills deteriorated from disuse. She thought about her father, about the burden he had carried after Fallujah, about Cassidy's inability to move past a tragedy that had never been Antonio Reyes's fault. She thought about legacy and justice and the impossibility of changing someone's mind once they had decided you were responsible for their pain. The afternoon stretched ahead, empty hours before she had to report to supply operations. Elena closed her eyes and tried to rest, but sleep would not come. Instead, her mind ran through shooting calculations, wind formulas, distance estimations. The math that Cassidy could not take away from her, even if he took away her opportunity to use it. Somewhere in the distance, she heard the thump of helicopter rotors. The base continued its operations, missions launching and returning, the machinery of war grinding forward regardless of individual disappointments. Elena was just one small piece in that machine, easily moved from one position to another. But small pieces could still be essential. Her father had taught her that. And if there was one thing she had learned from him, it was that patience and precision eventually overcome size and strength. Cassidy thought he had neutralized her. He thought reassignment to supply meant the end of her ability to prove him wrong. But he had made one critical miscalculation. He had assumed that opportunity was something officers controlled, something they could grant or deny at will. Sometimes opportunity was not granted. Sometimes it simply arrived, unexpected and urgent, demanding the presence of someone with specific skills regardless of what role they had been assigned. Elena did not know when that opportunity would come, but she knew with absolute certainty that when it did, she would be ready. The supply warehouse smelled of cardboard, machine oil, and dust. Elena stood between rows of metal shelving stacked with ammunition crates, medical supplies, and MRE boxes, holding a clipboard and counting inventory. The work was mind-numbing, exactly the kind of task designed to waste her capabilities while keeping her technically employed in useful military service. She had been in supply operations for 3 days. 3 days of counting, checking serial numbers, and updating spreadsheets. 3 days of watching her shooting skills degrade from lack of practice. 3 days of proving Cassidy's point that snipers were interchangeable parts, easily reassigned when inconvenient. Sergeant First Class Michael Torres ran the supply warehouse, a career logistics specialist who had spent 15 years perfecting the art of inventory management. He was a decent man, professional and fair, and he seemed genuinely apologetic about having Elena assigned to his operation. "I know this is not where you want to be, Staff Sergeant," he said on her first day. "But while you are here, I will make sure you learn something useful. Logistics is the backbone of combat operations. Bullets do not fire themselves to the front lines." Elena appreciated his attempt to frame the work as meaningful, but it did nothing to ease the frustration of being removed from the role she had trained years to master. Still, she performed the inventory tasks with the same precision she brought to shooting. If she had to count ammunition, she would count it perfectly. On the 4th morning, Martinez found her in the warehouse organizing pallets of medical supplies. "You look terrible," Martinez said without preamble. Elena looked down at her dust-covered uniform. "Supply work is dirty work." "I do not mean physically," Martinez said. "I mean you look like someone slowly dying inside. How are you managing this?" Elena set down her clipboard. "I manage it the same way I manage everything else. I focus on the task in front of me, and I complete it to standard." Martinez shook her head. "Elena, you're wasting away here. Your shooting eye is going to lose its edge. Your instincts are going to dull. You need to be on the range, maintaining your skills, staying sharp." "The range is not part of my assigned duties anymore," Elena said. "Unless Cassidy specifically orders me to maintain sniper proficiency, I have no authorization to use training ammunition or facility time." "That is exactly my point," Martinez said, frustration evident in her voice. "He is systematically destroying your capabilities through neglect. By the time he decides to use you again, if he ever does, you will be too degraded to perform." Before Elena could respond, an alarm sounded across the base. Not the routine test alarm they heard weekly, but the real alert that meant incoming contact or emergency situation. Both women froze, listening. The base loudspeaker crackled to life. "All personnel, this is not a drill. We have reports of hostile forces engaging patrol Delta 3, approximately 15 kilometers northeast of base. QRF is mobilizing immediately. All sniper-qualified personnel report to Operations Center." Martinez looked at Elena. "That includes you." "I am assigned to supply operations," Elena said, but she was already moving toward the warehouse exit. They ran across the compound toward the operations center. Other Marines were converging from all directions, some still pulling on gear, others already fully equipped. The organized chaos of emergency response was familiar, almost comforting after days of warehouse tedium. Inside the operations center, Major Cassidy stood at a map table with several other officers. He looked up as Elena and Martinez entered, his expression hardening immediately. "Captain Martinez, you are assigned as observer for this operation," he said. "Staff Sergeant Reyes, return to your supply duties." "Sir," Martinez began, but Cassidy cut her off. "Staff Sergeant Reyes is not on the sniper roster," he said. "We have qualified personnel available for this mission." Gunnery Sergeant Holbrook stepped forward. "Sir, if I may, Sergeant Shun called in sick this morning, and Sergeant Williams is on leave." Our sniper coverage for QRF is thin. We could use Staff Sergeant Reyes as backup. Cassidy's jaw worked silently for a moment. His eyes moved between Elena, Martinez, and the map table where the tactical situation was developing. Finally, he spoke. Fine. Staff Sergeant Reyes will deploy as secondary sniper, but only as secondary. Gunnery Sergeant Holbrook is primary. Elena felt a flash of dark irony. Holbrook, who had spent the past week undermining her credibility, was now the man she would support in combat. But this was not about ego or personal conflict. This was about Marines in contact who needed support. The briefing was rapid and efficient. Patrol Delta 3 had encountered a larger Taliban force than expected while investigating reports of weapons caches. The patrol was pinned down in a village compound with wounded personnel and limited ammunition. The terrain made aerial support difficult, and the Taliban had positioned fighters in buildings that commanded the approaches. QRF will establish a support position here, Cassidy said, pointing to high ground approximately 800 meters from the village. Snipers will provide overwatch and eliminate threats as they present themselves. The patrol reports at least 3 enemy positions with machine guns that need to be neutralized before we can advance. What is the estimated range to targets? Elena asked. Cassidy looked at her coldly. That is Gunnery Sergeant Holbrook's concern, not yours. You are there to provide backup support only. Understood, sir, Elena said. 20 minutes later, Elena sat in the back of a Humvee racing across the desert toward the contact area. Holbrook sat across from her, checking his rifle and equipment. Martinez sat beside Elena, already reviewing maps and intelligence data on her tablet. The vehicle convoy included 24 Marines, a mix of infantry and support personnel. The mood was tense but focused. This was what they trained for, what they were here to do. As they approached the support position, Elena could hear the distinctive crack of small arms fire in the distance. The Humvees halted at the base of a rocky hill, and everyone dismounted rapidly. Holbrook led the way up the hillside with Elena following close behind. The support position offered good visibility across the valley where the village sat. Elena could see muzzle flashes from several buildings, could hear the staccato rhythm of machine gun fire. The trap patrol was returning fire from a compound on the village's western edge, but they were clearly outnumbered and running low on ammunition. Holbrook set up his rifle on a natural rock formation that provided both cover and a stable shooting platform. Elena positioned herself 3 meters to his right, establishing her own shooting position with clear sight lines to the village. Range to nearest target building is 920 meters, Martinez called out, reading from a rangefinder. Wind is variable, mostly from the east at 6 miles per hour. Temperature, 96 degrees. Holbrook settled behind his scope. I have eyes on a machine gun position, 2nd floor of the blue building. 2 hostiles visible. Elena found the same position in her scope. She could see the barrel of the machine gun protruding from a window, could see the fighters moving behind it. Her instinct was to call out additional threats she was identifying, but Cassidy had made her role clear. She was backup only. Holbrook fired. The round impacted the wall 2 feet left of the window. He adjusted and fired again. This shot entered the window, but Elena could see the fighters were still moving, still operating the weapon. Adjust right .2 mils, Martinez called. Elevation is good. Holbrook made the correction and fired a 3rd time. The machine gun went silent. 1 threat down, but the patrol was still taking fire from at least 2 other positions. Next target, Holbrook said, scanning for threats. Elena had already identified them. A sniper position in the minaret of the village mosque, range approximately 1,100 meters, and a 2nd machine gun team in a compound to the south, approximately 980 meters. Both positions had clear lines of fire on the trap patrol. Before she could report what she had found, Holbrook spoke. I see movement in that southern compound. Looks like they are setting up mortars. That is actually a machine gun team preparing to relocate, Elena said quietly. The mortars are being assembled in the courtyard behind that position, not visible from this angle. Holbrook turned to look at her, his expression skeptical. And you know this how? Because I can see the mortar tube base plates stacked in the courtyard, Elena said. The reflection off the metal is distinctive. Holbrook looked back through his scope, adjusting his position. I do not see any mortar equipment. Because you're focused on the wrong area, Elena said, keeping her voice neutral. The machine gun team is the immediate threat, but the mortars will be operational in approximately 3 minutes. If they start dropping rounds on the patrol's position, casualties will be significant. Martinez, check her own optics. She is right. I can see mortar components in the courtyard. We need to address that threat immediately. Holbrook's face flushed red. I am a primary sniper on this operation. I will determine target priority. He aimed at the machine gun team and fired. The shot hit low, kicking up dust near the fighters, but not stopping them. He fired again with similar results. The unfamiliar combat stress was affecting his accuracy, and Elena could see his frustration building with each miss. In the village, the mortar team was nearly ready. Elena could see them adjusting the tube angle, preparing to drop rounds. The trap patrol had no idea what was about to hit them. She made a decision. Engaging mortar position, she announced, and shifted her rifle toward the courtyard. Negative, Holbrook barked. I did not authorize you to engage. Those Marines down there have maybe 90 seconds before mortars start landing on their heads, Elena said. I'm taking the shot. She found a mortar team in her scope. Range 1,150 meters. Wind pushing slightly from the east. Temperature differential between her position and target would affect trajectory. She made her calculations in seconds, muscle memory and training taking over. The first fighter was kneeling beside the mortar tube, hands on the traverse mechanism. Elena centered her crosshairs, compensated for wind and distance, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she watched the fighter fall backward, lifeless. The second fighter scrambled for cover, but Elena was already tracking him. She led his movements slightly, accounting for his speed and direction, and fired again. He dropped mid-stride. Mortar threat eliminated, Martinez confirmed. Holbrook spun toward Elena, his face contorted with rage. I told you not to engage. You just disobeyed a direct order in combat. The patrol needed those mortars neutralized, Elena said calmly, already scanning for additional threats through her scope. Your priority was the machine gun team. Mine was the mortars. Both threats are now addressed. Before Holbrook could respond, radio traffic erupted. Delta 3 to Overwatch. We are taking effective fire from a mosque minaret. We have 2 more wounded. Request immediate suppression. Martinez grabbed her radio. Overwatch copies. Engaging minaret position now. Holbrook swung his rifle toward the mosque, but Elena had already acquired the target. The sniper in the minaret was partially concealed behind decorative stonework, only his rifle barrel and a sliver of his head visible. Range was 1,240 meters, and the target was elevated approximately 30 meters above ground level, adding complexity to the ballistic calculation. I have a shot, Elena said. That is my target, Holbrook growled. Then take it, Elena said, not moving from her scope. But take it fast because that sniper just wounded 2 more Marines. Holbrook fired. The round impacted the stonework 3 feet from the target, sending chips of stone flying, but causing no damage to the shooter. He adjusted and fired again. This shot went high, sailing over the minaret entirely. Elena could see the Taliban sniper adjusting his own position, preparing for another shot at the trap patrol. She made a rapid decision that would either save lives or end her career. Moving to engage, she announced. Her crosshairs settled on the tiny visible portion of the sniper's head. This was an exceptionally difficult shot, requiring precision that left no margin for error. The target area was perhaps 6 inches across at over 1,200 meters, with the added complication of elevation differential and the heat shimmer rising from the village buildings. Elena controlled her breathing, felt her heartbeat slow, and gently squeezed the trigger. The rifle fired. Through the scope, she watched the Taliban sniper's head snap backward. He disappeared from view behind the stonework. Confirmed elimination, Martinez said quietly. Minaret threat neutralized. The radio crackled again. Delta 3 to Overwatch. Hostile fire has ceased from Minaret position. Unknown what happened, but we're no longer taking effective fire from that direction. Preparing to extract wounded and move to secondary position. Holbrook lowered his rifle slowly. His jaw clenched so tight Elena could see the muscles jumping in his cheek. When we get back to base, he said in a low, dangerous voice, I am reporting you for insubordination and failure to follow orders in a combat zone. Your career is finished. My career will be whatever it needs to be, Elena said. Those Marines are alive. That is what matters. The QRF moved forward, securing the village and extracting the wounded patrol. Elena and Martinez maintained overwatch throughout the operation, but no additional threats materialized. The Taliban fighters had withdrawn, leaving behind their dead and their weapons. 2 hours later, back at Forward Operating Base Chapman, Elena stood at attention in Major Cassidy's office. Holbrook stood beside her, still radiating fury. Martinez waited outside, not permitted in the disciplinary meeting. Cassidy sat behind his desk, reviewing the after-action reports. The silence stretched uncomfortably as he read through page after page of tactical details, radio transcripts, and casualty reports. Finally, he looked up. Staff Sergeant Reyes, he said, his voice dangerously calm. Gunnery Sergeant Holbrook reports that you engaged targets without authorization, countermanded his tactical decisions, and generally operated as though you were the primary sniper despite being explicitly told you were in a support role only. How do you respond to these allegations? Elena kept her eyes fixed on a point on the wall above Cassidy's head. The allegations are factually accurate, sir. I did engage targets that Gunnery Sergeant Holbrook had not authorized me to engage. I did make independent tactical decisions. I did operate outside the parameters of my assigned role. Cassidy's eyebrows rose slightly. So you admit to insubordination in combat? I admit to engaging enemy threats that posed imminent danger to friendly forces, sir. I prioritized saving Marine lives over following procedural restrictions. Those procedural restrictions exist for a reason, Cassidy said, his voice rising slightly. They exist to maintain chain of command, to ensure coordinated fire, to prevent fratricide and confusion. You do not get to decide which orders matter and which ones do not. With respect, sir, Elena said, I made tactical decisions based on battlefield conditions that were evolving faster than the established command structure could address. The mortar team would have been operational within 90 seconds. The Minaret sniper had already wounded 2 Marines and was preparing to fire again. Gunnery Sergeant Holbrook was engaged with different targets and could not address both threats simultaneously. Because I was following proper target priority, Holbrook interjected. Machine guns were the primary threat per standard tactical doctrine. Standard doctrine does not account for every battlefield variable, Elena said. Mortars at that range would have killed the entire patrol. The machine guns were suppressing them, but the mortars would have annihilated them. Cassidy held up a hand for silence. He pulled another document from his desk. This is a statement from First Lieutenant Sarah Crawford, the officer commanding the trap patrol. She specifically credits sniper support with saving her Marines' lives. She mentions the elimination of a mortar team and a Minaret sniper as the 2 shots that allowed her patrol to break contact and extract their wounded. He set the document down and looked directly at Elena. She does not know who fired those shots. She only knows that someone did, and because of those shots, 6 wounded Marines made it home instead of being killed by mortar fire. The room fell silent again. Elena could feel Holbrook's anger radiating like heat. Cassidy stood and walked to his window, looking out over the base. You know what the real problem is here, Staff Sergeant Reyes? The real problem is that you were right. Your assessment of the tactical situation was accurate. Your target priority was correct. Your shots were exceptional. And that makes this situation infinitely more complicated than if you had simply been wrong. He turned back to face her. If you had disobeyed orders and gotten Marines killed, the solution would be simple. Court-martial, discharge done. But you disobeyed orders and saved lives. which means I have to decide whether to punish success or reward insubordination. Sir, if I may, Holbrook began. You may not. Cassidy come off sharply. Gunnery Sergeant, you are dismissed. Return to your duties. Holbrook's face went pale with shock. Sir, I am the reporting party in this disciplinary matter. I should be present for. I said you are dismissed, Cassidy repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. Holbrook saluted stiffly and left, closing the door harder than necessary behind him. Elena remained at attention, uncertain what was coming next. Cassidy returned to his desk and sat down heavily. Do you know why I reassigned you to supply operations, Staff Sergeant? Because you do not believe snipers are reliable, sir, Elena said. Because my father's name reminds you of Fallujah and the mistakes you believe were made there. Cassidy's expression shifted, something dark and pained crossing his features. So you know about that? Captain Martinez did research, Elena said. She told me you were my father's commanding officer during the incident with the civilian vehicle. Cassidy was quiet for a long moment. Your father was a good Marine, he finally said. One of the best snipers I ever worked with. But that day in Fallujah, everything went wrong. The intelligence was bad. The wind conditions were worse than forecasted. The spotter was inexperienced. And 3 children died because of a shot that should have saved American lives. That was not my father's fault, Elena said, her voice harder than she intended. The investigation cleared him. The responsibility fell on the spotter and on the mission planning. I know what the investigation said, Cassidy replied. I was there when they delivered the findings. But those children were still dead. And standing there watching their parents scream, watching the media tear us apart, watching my career trajectory change because I was the officer in charge, all I could think was that snipers had too much autonomy, too much independent decision-making authority. That one bad call could destroy everything. So you decided all snipers were unreliable, Elena said. I decided that sniper operations needed tighter oversight, Cassidy said. More control, more restrictions, more supervision. And then you showed up. Antonio Reyes's daughter. Small, young, female, everything that should not work in a combat sniper. And you were exceptional. Every shot, every calculation, every decision. You were your father reborn, but without any of the tragedy that destroyed my faith in the system. He stood again, pacing to the window. I reassigned you to supply because watching you succeed was unbearable. Because every time you made an impossible shot, I remembered Fallujah. I remembered failing to prevent a tragedy. I remembered that no matter how skilled a sniper is, they are still human, still capable of making the one mistake that costs innocent lives. Elena felt something shift in her understanding of the man before her. This was not simple prejudice or professional jealousy. This was trauma, guilt, the weight of command decisions that haunted a career. Sir, Elena said carefully, my father made the right call in Fallujah. The wind data he received was incorrect. He did everything according to training and procedure. Sometimes the variables align against you despite perfect execution. That is not failure. That is the reality of operating in complex environments. Cassidy turned to face her. And today you made decisions without complete information, without proper authorization, operating on instinct and judgment. You were right, but you could have been wrong. Those Marines could have died because you decided you knew better than your commanding sniper. They would have died if I had not acted, Elena said firmly. Sir, with respect, you cannot eliminate all risk from combat operations. You cannot create enough oversight to prevent every possible mistake. At some point, you have to trust your people to make the right call under pressure. That is what leadership means. Cassidy returned to his desk and pulled out a file folder. Inside was Elena's personnel record, her qualification scores, her deployment history. He reviewed it silently for several minutes. Here is my decision, he finally said. You will receive a written reprimand for failure to follow the tactical chain of command during today's operation. That reprimand will go in your permanent record. However, you will also receive a commendation for exceptional performance under combat conditions and for actions that directly resulted in saving the lives of 6 wounded Marines. Both documents will reflect the complexity of what happened today. He closed the folder. You are also reinstated to active sniper duties, effective immediately. You will resume regular training and be available for operational deployment as needed. But Staff Sergeant Reyes, understand this. If you ever again operate outside your assigned parameters without explicit authorization, I will end your career without hesitation. The line between heroic initiative and dangerous insubordination is thin. Today you are on the right side of that line. Do not cross it again. Elena felt relief and vindication wash through her in equal measure. Understood, sir. Thank you, sir. Dismissed, Cassidy said. Elena saluted and turned to leave. As she reached the door, Cassidy spoke again. Staff Sergeant, your father would be proud of you. I want you to know that. Elena paused, her hand on the doorknob. Thank you, sir. That means more than you know. She stepped out into the Afghan sunlight, where Martinez waited anxiously. The captain's face showed every shade of worry and hope. Well? She asked. Elena smiled, the first genuine smile in days. I'm back on the rifle, she said, and I have a feeling this is far from over. Elena spent the next 2 days back on the range, reestablishing her fundamentals and clearing the rust that had accumulated during her time in supply operations. Her hands remembered the rifle. Her eye remembered the scope, but precision required constant maintenance. She fired hundreds of rounds, working distances from 800 meters out to 2,000, feeling her confidence rebuild with each shot. Martinez spotted for her during most sessions, their partnership settling back into the comfortable rhythm they had developed before the reassignment. On the morning of the third day, as Elena was preparing to head to the range again, Cassidy's voice came over the base loudspeaker requesting her presence at the operations center immediately. She arrived to find Cassidy, Martinez, and several other officers gathered around a large topographical map spread across the conference table. The atmosphere was tense, focused. This was operational planning, not routine briefing. Staff Sergeant Reyes, thank you for responding quickly, Cassidy said. We have a developing situation that requires your specific skill set. He pointed to a location on the map, approximately 40 kilometers northeast of their position. Intelligence reports indicate a high-value target has been located at this compound. The target is Hamid Zarif, a bomb maker responsible for at least 15 IED attacks on coalition forces over the past 6 months. We have confirmed visual identification, and he is currently meeting with several Taliban commanders to coordinate future operations. What is the tactical situation, sir? Elena asked. Cassidy gestured to Captain Richard Foster, the battalion intelligence officer. Foster stepped forward and began the detailed briefing. The compound sits on elevated terrain with clear sight lines in all directions, Foster said. Zarif arrived yesterday evening, and our surveillance indicates he plans to remain through tomorrow. However, we have reason to believe he may depart earlier if he suspects coalition interest. This creates a narrow window for engagement. He pulled up satellite imagery on a laptop. The challenge is distance and positioning. The nearest covered approach that provides adequate line of sight to the compound is here, approximately 3,400 meters from the primary target building. Elena studied the imagery carefully. That is extreme range, she said, beyond standard engagement parameters. Correct, Foster replied, which is why this mission was deemed impractical until recent events demonstrated that extreme range engagement may be feasible with the right shooter. Cassidy cleared his throat. Staff Sergeant Reyes, I am assigning you as primary sniper for this operation. Captain Martinez will serve as your spotter. You will insert to the observation position tonight, establish overwatch, and engage the target when positive identification is confirmed and conditions are optimal. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the weight of what was being proposed. A 400-meter shot was beyond anything Elena had attempted in combat. It was pushing the absolute limits of the rifle's effective range and would require perfect conditions, flawless calculation, and exceptional execution. Sir, Elena said carefully, a shot at that distance carries significant risk of failure. Environmental variables become exponentially more difficult to predict and compensate for at extended ranges. I'm aware of the risks, Cassidy said. I am also aware that you are the only sniper in this battalion who has demonstrated consistent capability at ranges exceeding 3,000 meters. If you assess the mission as impossible, I need to know now. Elena returned her attention to the satellite imagery, studying the terrain, the angles, the potential shooting positions. Her mind automatically began running calculations. Wind would be the primary challenge at that distance, along with the extreme bullet drop and flight time that would give the target opportunity to move. It is not impossible, she said, but it will require ideal conditions and extended observation time to properly calculate all variables. What is my window for taking the shot? You will have from dawn until 1200 hours tomorrow, Cassidy said. After that, intelligence suggests Zarif will likely depart. If he cannot make the shot by noon, the mission will be scrubbed. Elena nodded slowly. I will need additional equipment. High-precision ammunition, an upgraded ballistic computer, and weather monitoring equipment more sensitive than standard issue. Already arranged, Cassidy said. Supply has been notified to provide whatever you require. You deploy at 2,200 hours tonight. That gives you 6 hours to prepare. Understood, sir, Elena said. One more thing, Cassidy added, his expression serious. There are rumors that Taliban forces in the area have employed their own counter-sniper teams. Intelligence is uncertain, but there is a possibility you may not be alone out there. You will have a security element, but once you take the shot, your position will be compromised. Extraction will need to be immediate. After the briefing concluded, Elena and Martinez walked together toward the armory. The weight of the mission settled heavily on Elena's shoulders. This was not just another long-range engagement. This was a shot that would push every limit, test every skill, and carry consequences that extended far beyond single trigger pull. Martinez broke the silence. You do not have to accept this mission. You could recommend someone else, suggest alternative tactics, request a closer observation position. Elena shook her head. There is no one else who can make this shot, and there is no closer position that would not risk compromise and casualties. This is the mission, and I am the only one qualified to execute it. They spent the afternoon preparing equipment with obsessive attention to detail. Elena personally inspected every round of ammunition, checking for imperfections. She calibrated the ballistic computer twice, verified all the environmental sensors, and rehearsed her shooting sequence until it became automatic. Corporal Davis appeared at the armory as evening approached. He carried a small package wrapped in canvas. Staff Sergeant Reyes, he said, I heard about tomorrow's mission. I wanted to give you something. He unwrapped the canvas to reveal a handmade leather cheek pad for her rifle. I made it myself, he explained. It is fitted specifically to your measurements. I figured after watching you shoot, your cheek weld is so consistent that a custom pad might help with the extreme range stuff. Elena was genuinely touched by the gesture. This is excellent work, Corporal. Thank you. You helped me when nobody else would, Davis said. Figured I should return the favor. Besides, I wanted to come back from this mission. You're the best teacher I have ever had. After he left, Martinez examined the cheek pad. That kid worships you, she said. Half the junior enlisted on this base do. You have become something of a legend. Legends are dangerous, Elena said, attaching the new pad to her rifle. They create expectations that reality cannot always meet. At 2,200 hours, Elena and Martinez boarded a helicopter with a 6-man security team. The flight took 40 minutes, flying low and fast across the darkened landscape. They landed 3 kilometers from the observation position and moved on foot through the night, using night vision to navigate the rocky terrain. The observation position was a natural rock formation that provided both concealment and a stable shooting platform. Elena began setting up immediately, establishing her rifle rest, positioning the weather station, and plotting exact ranges to multiple reference points around the target compound. Martinez set up the spotting scope and began recording environmental data. Wind is variable, she said quietly, gusting between 4 and 9 miles per hour, direction shifting between northwest and north. Temperature is dropping, currently 68 degrees. Barometric pressure is stable at 30.02. Elena calculated the bullet flight time at 3,400 meters, approximately 4.5 seconds. That was an eternity in combat terms, enough time for wind conditions to shift, for the target to move, for 1,000 variables to change the shot's outcome. She settled behind her rifle and looked through the scope toward the compound. With night vision enhancement, she could see the buildings clearly. Lights were visible in several windows. Guards patrolled the perimeter. Somewhere inside that compound, Hamid Zarif was planning attacks that would kill American soldiers. "Get some rest," Martinez said. "Dawn is still 5 hours away. I will maintain watch." Elena tried to sleep, but her mind would not quiet. She kept running calculations, visualizing the shot, anticipating problems. At some point, exhaustion overcame anxiety, and she drifted into uneasy sleep. Martinez woke her as the eastern sky began to lighten. Movement in the compound. She whispered. Multiple individuals emerging from the main building. Elena moved quickly to her shooting position and acquired the compound through her scope. Several men had gathered in the courtyard. She compared faces to the intelligence photos she had memorized. The third man from the left matched Hamid Zarif with high confidence. He was speaking with the others, gesturing toward a vehicle. "Possible target identification," Elena said. "Subject matches primary description. Need better lighting for positive confirmation." The sun rose slowly, painting the landscape in shades of orange and gold. As light improved, Elena's confidence in the identification increased. "That is Zarif," she said. "Positive identification confirmed." Martinez checked wind conditions. Wind steady at 6 miles per hour from the northwest. Temperature 72 degrees and rising. Barometric pressure holding steady. Elena began her final calculations. At 3,400 meters, the bullet would drop over 900 inches from boreline. The wind drift would push the round approximately 40 inches left. The temperature and altitude would affect velocity. Every variable had to be perfect. She adjusted her scope for the extreme range, compensated for all known factors, and settled into her shooting position. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. The world narrowed to the crosshairs and the target. Zarif stood near the vehicle, still talking with his commanders. He was stationary, providing the stable target Elena needed. This was the moment. The conditions would not get better. She began her trigger squeeze, feeling the familiar pressure building. The shot was 5 seconds from breaking when Martinez's voice cut through the silence. "Contact left," she hissed urgently. "We have another sniper team, approximately 800 meters northwest. They are scanning in our direction." Elena froze, her fingers still on the trigger. The Taliban counter-sniper team that intelligence had warned about was not a rumor. They were real, they were close, and they were hunting. Elena's mind split into two parallel tracks. One part of her consciousness remained locked on Hamid Zarif through her scope, calculating the 400-meter shot that would eliminate a high-value target. The other part processed the immediate threat of an enemy sniper team scanning for her position from 800 meters away. "How many hostiles?" Elena asked quietly, not moving from a rifle. Martinez adjusted her spotting scope slightly. "2 confirmed. 1 shooter, 1 spotter. They have a Dragunov SVD by the look of it. Effective range, approximately 800 meters with experienced shooter." Which meant they were at the edge of their capability, but still deadly. If they spot Elena's position, they could engage effectively. And once she fired at Zarif, the muzzle flash and report would give away her location immediately. "Can they see us?" Elena asked. "Not yet," Martinez said. "They are scanning systematically, but they have not locked on our position. The rock formation is providing good concealment. But the moment you fire, they will know exactly where we are." Elena ran the tactical calculation rapidly. The 400-meter shot would require 4.5 seconds of flight time. The enemy sniper would hear her shot, identify the muzzle flash, and return fire within seconds. She would have perhaps 10 seconds to take her shot, confirm the hit, and relocate to cover before incoming rounds started impacting their position. The security team can suppress the enemy sniper position, Martinez said, reading Elena's thoughts. But that will alert everyone in the compound. Zarif will go to ground, and we will lose the shot opportunity. So I take the shot and deal with the counter-sniper immediately after, Elena said. You would need to hit a target at 800 meters within seconds of firing at 3,400 meters, Martinez said. Different range, different wind compensation, no time to recalculate. That is asking a lot even for you. Elena kept her eye pressed to her scope, watching Zarif in the compound below. He was still talking with his commanders, still stationary, still providing the perfect target. This opportunity might not come again. Give me exact range to the enemy sniper position, Elena said. Martinez checked her rangefinder. 847 meters, bearing 310 degrees, elevation 23 feet above our position. Elena made a decision that defied conventional sniper doctrine, but aligned with the reality of the situation. I'm going to take both shots, she said. Zarif first, then immediate transition to the counter-sniper. I need you to call the second shot for me the instant my first round is downrange. Martinez was silent for a moment. Elena, that is insane. You would have maybe 5 seconds to transition, reacquire, and fire. For seconds, Elena corrected. Maybe less. But it is the only way we complete the mission and survive the counter-sniper threat. If I take out their shooter before he can get rounds on target, we buy time for extraction. The security team leader, Staff Sergeant Marcus Chun, crawled up beside them. What is the call, Staff Sergeant Reyes? He asked quietly. We can engage the hostile sniper team on your word. Negative, Elena said. Hold fire unless they acquire us, or I miss the countershot. I need you ready for immediate extraction once both threats are eliminated. Shin looked skeptical but nodded. Your call. We will be ready. Elena returned her full attention to her scope. Zarif was moving now, walking toward the vehicle with 2 of his commanders. He stopped beside the driver's door, his hand resting on the roof. The conversation continued. He was exposed, vulnerable, presenting a clear target. Wind is steady at 5 miles per hour northwest. Martinez called softly. Temperature, 74 degrees. Barometric pressure stable. Range 3,412 meters to target. Elena made microscopic adjustments to her hold, compensating for every variable she could measure and several she had to estimate. At this range, the Earth's rotation would actually affect bullet trajectory. The Coriolis effect would push the round slightly right. She adjusted for it. Her breathing slowed to almost nothing. Her heartbeat became audible in her ears, a steady rhythm that she used to time her shot between beats. The crosshairs settled on center mass of Zarif's torso. At this distance, aiming for a headshot would be arrogant. Center mass gave the largest target area and the highest probability of hit. She began her final trigger squeeze, applying pressure with the pad of her finger, feeling the resistance of the trigger spring. The world narrowed to the reticle and the target. Everything else faded to background noise. The rifle fired. The recoil drove into her shoulder as the 750 grain bullet left the barrel at 2,850 feet per second. She kept her eye on the scope, watching the vapor trail arc across the valley. 4.5 seconds felt like an eternity. The bullet impacted Zarif dead center in the chest. He collapsed instantly, falling against the vehicle before sliding to the ground. The men around him scattered in confusion, looking around wildly for the source of fire. Confirmed hit, Martinez said. Target down. Transition to counter-sniper now. Elena was already moving. She swung the rifle left and elevated slightly, her muscle memory calling up the 847-meter range calculation, even as her conscious mind focused on acquiring the target. The Taliban sniper team had heard her shot and were scanning frantically in her direction. Through her scope, she found them. The shooter was behind a Dragunov rifle, his eye pressed to the scope. The spotter beside him was using binoculars, sweeping across the rock formations where Elena and her team were concealed. Range 847, wind same, elevation plus 23 feet, Martinez called rapidly. They're about to spot us. The Taliban shooter was swinging his rifle, toward Elena's position. She could see his barrel moving, could see him adjusting his aim. In seconds, he would fire, and their cover would dissolve under incoming precision fire. Elena settled her crosshairs on the shooter's upper chest. At 847 meters, this was a routine shot by her standards, but there was nothing routine about taking its seconds after a 400-meter engagement with an enemy rifle already swinging toward her position. She fired. The Taliban shooter jerked backward, his rifle falling from his hands. The spotter beside him dropped flat, scrambling for the fallen Dragunov. Second target, Elena said calmly, already tracking the spotter. The man grabbed the rifle and tried to shoulder it, but he was panicked, his movements hurried and imprecise. Elena fired again. He went still, sprawling across the rocks beside his dead partner. Both threats eliminated, Martinez confirmed. Time to move. The security team was already in motion. Chun had his men up and moving toward the extraction point before Elena had fully cleared her rifle from the shooting position. She grabbed her gear and followed, Martinez right behind her. They had covered maybe 50 meters when the compound below erupted in activity. Dozens of Taliban fighters poured from buildings, firing wildly toward the hillside where Elena's muzzle flash had originated. The shots were poorly aimed, rage and confusion overcoming tactical discipline, but the sheer volume of fire was dangerous. Keep moving, Chin ordered, his team laying down covering fire to discourage pursuit. The extraction point was 800 meters away across broken terrain. Elena ran with her rifle and gear, her smaller size actually an advantage in navigating the rocky ground. She could hear bullets impacting around them, the sharp crack of near misses mixing with the deeper boom of AK-47 fire. Martinez stumbled, crying out in pain. Elena turned back immediately and saw blood spreading across Martinez's left thigh. She had taken shrapnel from a ricochet off the rocks. "I can move," Martinez gasped, pushing herself up. "Just help me keep pace." Elena got under Martinez's left arm, supporting her weight while Chin's security team maintained suppressive fire. They covered the remaining distance in a fighting retreat, alternating movement and fire until they reached the helicopter landing zone. The medevac bird was already inbound, the pilot having monitored their tactical net. It touched down in a storm of dust, and Elena helped Martinez aboard while Chin's team established a defensive perimeter. Once airborne, the crew chief began working on Martinez's leg, cutting away the uniform and applying pressure to the wound. "It is not arterial," he shouted over the rotor noise. "She'll be fine, but she needs proper medical attention fast." Elena knelt beside her friend and spotter. "You saved those Marines," Martinez said, wincing as the crew chief worked. "Zarif is dead. That is at least a dozen future attacks prevented. Worth a little shrapnel." "You're not just a little shrapnel," Elena said. "You're my partner." Martinez managed a pained smile. "Best snipers Potter team in the Corps. Remember that when they try to assign you someone new." The helicopter raced toward forward operating base Chapman, leaving behind the chaos of the compound and the bodies of 3 enemy combatants who had underestimated the small woman with the big rifle. When they landed, medical personnel were waiting. They loaded Martinez onto a stretcher and rushed her toward the aid station. Elena followed until a medic stopped her at the door. "Family only past this point," he said. "I am her family," Elena said firmly. "We bleed together." The medic looked at her dust-covered uniform, the rifle still slung across her back, the fierce determination in her eyes. He stepped aside without another word. Inside the aid station, doctors worked quickly to clean and close Martinez's wound. The shrapnel had caused significant soft tissue damage, but had missed the bone and major vessels. She would recover fully, but would need several weeks before returning to duty. Cassidy arrived while the doctors were finishing. He surveyed the scene, taking in Martinez on the table, and Elena standing vigil beside her. His expression was unreadable. "Mission successful?" he asked. "Target eliminated," Elena confirmed. "Counter-sniper team eliminated. All friendly personnel recovered with 1 wounded, non-life-threatening." "Mission complete, sir." Cassidy nodded slowly. "That was exceptional work under extraordinary circumstances, Staff Sergeant." The entire chain of command from battalion to brigade has been notified. You have demonstrated capabilities that very few snipers in any military possess. He paused, his expression softening slightly. And you brought your spotter home. That matters more than the mission success. Never forget that. After he left, Elena sat in a chair beside Martinez's bed. Her friend was sedated now, sleeping peacefully as the pain medication took effect. Elena watched her breathe, grateful that the outcome had not been worse. The mission was complete. Hamid Zarif would plant no more IEDs. The Taliban counter-sniper team would threaten no more coalition forces. But the cost had been Martinez's blood, and Elena felt that weight settle on her shoulders alongside all the other responsibilities she carried. She thought about the 2 shots. The impossible 400-meter engagement followed immediately by the desperate 47-meter counter-sniper elimination. Both had required everything she possessed, every skill her father had taught her, every lesson the Marine Corps had drilled into her. And both had proven that size did not determine capability. Mathematics did. Discipline did. The willingness to take the shot when it mattered most did. Elena leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new doubts, new people who would look at her and see only her height rather than her skill. But today, she had proven once again that the impossible was just another calculation waiting to be solved. The briefing room was packed. Every senior officer on Forward Operating Base Chapman had assembled, along with representatives from brigade headquarters who had flown in specifically for this meeting. Elena stood at attention near the front, uncomfortable with the attention focused in her direction. Colonel Patricia Brennan, the brigade commander, stood at the head of the conference table reviewing mission reports on her tablet. She was a career infantry officer with 3 combat deployments and a reputation for blunt assessment. When she finally looked up, her gaze settled directly on Elena. "Staff Sergeant Reyes," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. "In the past 2 weeks, you have made 3 extraordinary long-range eliminations. A 50-meter shot in a sandstorm. A 950-meter shot with unfamiliar equipment under time pressure. And most recently, a 400-meter shot immediately followed by a counter-sniper engagement at 847 meters, all while under threat of discovery and return fire. Yes, Mom, Elena repeated. These shots have been verified by multiple witnesses, confirmed through surveillance assets, and documented in official after-action reports. The intelligence value of your most recent target elimination alone justifies this entire deployment cycle. Do you understand the significance of what you have accomplished? I understand that I have performed my assigned duties to the best of my ability, ma'am. A slight smile crossed Brennan's face. Diplomatic answer. But we both know these were not ordinary assigned duties. These were exceptional performances under circumstances that would challenge the most experienced snipers in any military force worldwide. She set down her tablet and walked around the table to stand directly in front of Elena. I am here to inform you that you are being awarded the Bronze Star with Valor Device for your actions during the Zarif elimination mission. Additionally, your previous engagements are being reviewed for further recognition. The room remained silent. Elena felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, measuring her reaction. Thank you, ma'am. I am honored. You should be, Brennan said. But I'm also here to discuss your future. Your skills are wasted in a conventional infantry battalion. I am recommending you for immediate transfer to a special operations support unit where your capabilities can be fully utilized in high-priority missions. Before Elena could respond, Major Cassidy stood from his position near the back of the room. Ma'am, if I may, Staff Sergeant Reyes has been an integral part of this battalion's combat effectiveness. Transferring her would significantly impact our operational capability. Brennan turned to face him. Major Cassidy, your concerns are noted. However, the needs of the Corps supersede individual unit preferences. Staff Sergeant Reyes represents a capability that is extraordinarily rare. She needs to be positioned where that capability can have maximum strategic impact. With respect, ma'am, Cassidy said, his voice careful. Staff Sergeant Reyes has also demonstrated the importance of proper integration with her unit. She has relationships here, familiarity with local terrain and threats, and proven coordination with her spotter and security elements. Moving her to a new unit would require extensive reintegration time. Brennan studied Cassidy for a long moment. Your defense of your personnel is commendable, Major. But let me be clear. This is not a request for your opinion. This is notification of a command decision that has already been made at levels above both of us. She turned back to Elena. Staff Sergeant Reyes, you will transfer to Special Operations Task Force West effective in 72 hours. You will be given time to prepare and transition your current responsibilities. Dismissed. Elena saluted and exited the briefing room. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down on the compound with familiar intensity. She had expected recognition eventually, but transfer orders had come as a complete surprise. 3 days to leave the unit where she had proven herself, leave the people who had become family. Martinez found her an hour later at the range, firing slow, methodical shots at targets set at varying distances. The captain walked with a noticeable limp, still recovering from her shrapnel wound, but she had refused to remain confined to medical. Heard about your transfer, Martinez said, settling onto a bench near the firing line. Special operations. That is a big deal. Elena fired another shot, watched it impact center mass at 1,200 meters, and sat back from her rifle. It feels wrong, like I am abandoning everyone here. You are not abandoning anyone, Martinez said firmly. You are advancing. This is what success looks like in the military. You prove yourself, you get new opportunities, you take on bigger challenges. But what about you? Elena asked. Your leg is still healing. You need a reliable shooter to work with during recovery. Martinez smiled. I will manage. Besides, this is not about me. This is about you getting the recognition and assignment you have earned. Do not let loyalty to this unit prevent you from accepting what you have worked your entire career to achieve. That night, Elena lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The wooden box with her father's Purple Heart sat on the small shelf beside her bed. She took it down and held the metal in her palm, feeling its weight. Her father had spent his entire career in conventional infantry units. He had never sought special operations assignments, had never pursued recognition beyond doing his job well. Would he approve of this transfer? Would he see it as advancement or as abandonment of the Marines who depended on her? The next morning, Corporal Davis found her cleaning her rifle in the armory. He looked uncertain, younger than his years. Is it true, Staff Sergeant? You are leaving? Transfer orders came through, Elena confirmed. I deploy to a new unit in 2 days. Davis sat down heavily on a nearby bench. That is good for you. Special operations is where the real work happens. But it is going to be weird here without you. You will do fine, Corporal, Elena said. You have learned the fundamentals. Keep practicing, stay humble, and always remember that marksmanship is 90% mental discipline. I know, Davis said. You taught me that. You taught me a lot of things. I just wanted to say thank you before you left. You changed my career trajectory, probably my life. I will not forget that. After he left, Elena felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle deeper. She had impacted people here, had changed trajectories and saved lives and proven things that needed proving. Walking away felt like leaving work unfinished. She spent her final full day on base, saying quiet goodbyes to the people she had served alongside. The young private she had helped with rifle basics. The supply sergeant who had been kind during her reassignment. The security team that had covered her extraction from the Zarif mission. Each conversation reinforced how much she had become part of this community. That evening, Cassidy requested her presence in his office. When she arrived, he was alone, reviewing paperwork at his desk. He gestured for her to sit. I tried to block your transfer, he said without preamble. Called in every favor I had at Brigade. Made the case that your integration here was too valuable to disrupt. They overruled me at every level. Elena was surprised by his candor. Sir, you do not need to explain. These are legitimate orders. I know they are legitimate, Cassidy said, but that does not mean I agree with them. You have proven yourself here. You have earned the respect of this battalion, and now they are taking you away to use you as a specialized asset in operations you will never be able to discuss with anyone." He stood and walked to his window, the familiar gesture Elena had seen many times before. "When you first arrived, I saw you as a problem, a reminder of my failures, a risk I did not want to take. But you forced me to confront my own biases, my own trauma. You proved that skill and determination matter more than size or gender or any of the other arbitrary measurements we use to judge people." "Sir," Elena began, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. You're going to do extraordinary things in special operations. You're going to make shots that will never make it into official records, save lives that will never know your name, and carry burdens that you cannot share. That is the nature of that world. But I want you to know that what you accomplished here mattered. You changed this battalion. You changed me." He turned to face her, and for the first time, Elena saw genuine respect in his eyes. "Your father would be incredibly proud of you. I know I am." Elena felt emotion tighten her throat. "Thank you, sir. That means more than you know." Cassidy returned to his desk and pulled out a folder. Inside was a copy of her Bronze Star citation and a letter of recommendation he had written to her new command. "I told them they're getting the finest combat sniper I have ever had the privilege to serve with. I meant every word." On her final morning at Forward Operating Base Chapman, Elena packed her gear with methodical care. Her rifle case, her equipment, her personal items all fit into 2 duffel bags and a footlocker. Everything she owned in the world reduced to luggage that she could carry herself. Martinez insisted on coming to the helicopter pad despite her injury. They stood together in the morning heat, watching the transport bird approach across the valley. "You better stay in touch," Martinez said. "I want to hear about all the classified missions you cannot tell me about." Elena smiled. "That'll be short conversations." The helicopter touched down, rotors kicking up dust that forced them to squint. Elena picked up her bags and turned to face her friend and partner. "Thank you for everything, Sophia. You made me better at this job and better as a person." Martinez pulled her into a tight hug, ignoring the pain in her leg. "Go do impossible things. And when people doubt you, which they will, remember that you have already proven them wrong more times than most people attempt in their entire careers." Elena boarded the helicopter and found a seat near the open door. As the bird lifted off, she watched Forward Operating Base Chapman grow smaller below her. The compound where she had faced her greatest challenges, proven her capabilities, and finally earned the recognition that had eluded her throughout her career. But even as relief and pride mixed with sadness, Elena felt something else stirring. Anticipation. The knowledge that harder challenges waited ahead. That the shots she had made here, extraordinary as they were, might be only preparation for what was coming. The helicopter banked east toward her new assignment, carrying her toward a future that was both exciting and uncertain. Below, the Afghan landscape rolled past in shades of brown and tan, hiding its dangers beneath a deceptively peaceful surface. Elena touched the small pouch on her vest where she kept her father's marksmanship medal. Whatever came next, she would face it the way she faced everything, with precision, discipline, and the absolute certainty that size did not determine capability. Mathematics did, and the math never lied. Special Operations Task Force West operated from a classified compound 50 kilometers from any marked base. The helicopter delivered Elena to a landing zone surrounded by high walls and guard towers that bristled with advanced surveillance equipment. This was a different world from conventional infantry operations, and the difference was apparent from the moment she stepped off the aircraft. A tall man in civilian clothes approached, his bearing unmistakably military despite the lack of uniform. "Staff Sergeant Reyes, welcome to Task Force West. I am Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, your new operations officer. Grab your gear and follow me." Elena shouldered her bags and followed Morrison through security checkpoints that verified her identity 3 separate times before allowing her into the main compound. Inside, the facility was sparse but equipped with technology she had never seen in conventional units. Communications arrays, tactical operations centers with wall's-eyes displays, and weapon systems that looked like they belonged in science fiction. Morrison led her to a small office and gestured for her to sit. "Let me be direct," he said. "We brought you here because you have demonstrated capabilities that we need for a very specific mission profile. Long-range precision elimination of high-value targets in denied areas where conventional forces cannot operate effectively." "Understood, sir," Elena said. "What you need to understand is that we operate differently here. No large unit support. No quick reaction forces standing by. When we insert you into hostile territory, you will have minimal backup, and extraction will be contingent on mission success. The risk level is significantly higher than what you experienced in conventional operations." "I accept those risks, sir." Morrison studied her carefully. "You're the smallest operator we have ever brought into this task force. That is not a criticism, just a statement of fact. Some of the team members have expressed concern about your physical capability to carry the equipment loads required for extended operations in extreme terrain." Elena had heard variations of this speech her entire career. "With respect, sir, I have carried full combat loads through mountainous terrain in Afghanistan for 4 months without incident. My size requires me to be more efficient with weight distribution, but it has never prevented me from completing any assigned mission." "Fair enough," Morrison said. "You will have opportunity to prove that during workup training. But right now, we have a more immediate situation. There is a mission window opening in 72 hours that requires your specific skill set. If you can qualify on our systems and integrate with your new team in that time frame, you will deploy. If not, we will have to scrub the mission and wait for another opportunity." "What is the mission, sir?" Morrison pulled up a map on his computer screen. "Hostile forces have captured an American aid worker in a remote mountain village. Intelligence indicates they plan to execute him in a propaganda video within the next week. The captors are holding him in a compound that is heavily fortified and surrounded by civilian population, making conventional rescue operations impossible without significant collateral damage." He zoomed in on satellite imagery. "However, there's a ridgeline approximately 3,600 meters from the compound that provides line of sight to the execution courtyard. Our intelligence suggests they will bring the hostage out at dawn in 4 days to film the execution. We need a shooter who can make an elimination shot at that range under field conditions with no opportunity for ranging shots or adjustment." 3,600 meters, Elena said quietly. "That is beyond the effective range of standard sniper systems. Which is why we had to wait for a shooter with proven capability at extreme ranges," Morrison said. "You are the only operator in theater who has demonstrated consistent accuracy beyond 3,000 meters. This mission was literally on hold waiting for someone with your capabilities." Elena studied the imagery, her mind already calculating angles and trajectories. "Were the terrain considerations? Elevation differential of approximately 800 feet, Morrison said. "Mountain winds will be unpredictable and gusty. Temperature extremes between day and night will affect ballistic performance, and you will be operating at altitude that will impact both your physical performance and your equipment function." "Who will be my spotter?" Morrison clicked to another file. "Chief Petty Officer Alexis Wright, Navy SEAL with 8 years special operations experience and extensive high-altitude training. She's been briefing on this mission for 2 weeks and knows the terrain intimately." Elena felt slight relief that her spotter would be experienced and female. The gender consideration should not matter professionally, but experience had taught her that some male operators struggled to trust female team members in combat roles. "When do I meet her?" "Right now," Morrison said, standing. "She is waiting at the range to begin your qualification process." The range was unlike anything Elena had used before. It extended beyond visible horizon with targets placed at intervals up to 4,000 meters. Chief Wright was waiting there, a woman in her early 30s with the lean build of someone who spent her life in demanding physical training. She extended her hand as Elena approached. "Staff Sergeant Reyes, good to finally meet you. Heard a lot about your work in Afghanistan. Those shots you made are already becoming legend in the special operations community." Elena shook her hand. "Please call me Elena." And I hope the legends are not too exaggerated. Wright smiled. Actually, I ran the numbers myself. If anything, the official reports understate how difficult those shots were. The 400-meter engagement followed immediately by the counter-sniper elimination. That should not be possible for a human being. But you did it. She gestured toward the range. I have targets set at 3,600 meters under conditions similar to what we will face on the actual mission. We have 2 days to dial in your shooting solution and build our communication rhythm. After that, we either go or we scrub. Elena spent the next 48 hours living on the range. She fired hundreds of rounds at extreme distances, learning the subtle differences in the specialized ammunition and the upgraded rifle system that Task Force West provided. Wright proved to be an exceptional spotter, her wind calls precise and her range estimations accurate. On the second day, as Elena was preparing for another series of shots, Wright asked a question that had clearly been on her mind. Does it bother you, being the smallest person in every operational unit you have ever served in? Elena considered the question carefully. It used to, she said. When I was younger, I thought I had to prove myself constantly. But I learned that people will doubt you regardless of how many times you prove them wrong. So now I focus on the work, not on changing minds. Wright nodded. I get that. I have spent my entire career as one of maybe a dozen women in the SEAL community. The doubt never really goes away. It just becomes background noise you learn to ignore. They continued training through the evening and into the night, working with night vision and thermal optics, building the partnership that would be essential for mission success. By the time Morrison called them in for final mission briefing, Elena felt confident in her ability to make the shot and in Wright's capability to support her. The briefing included satellite imagery updates showing the compound layout and guard positions. Intelligence had confirmed that the execution was scheduled for dawn in 2 days. Elena and Wright would insert 24 hours prior, establish their position overnight, and take the shot when the hostage was brought into the courtyard. The target is not the hostage, Morrison clarified. The target is the executioner, a man named Khalid Mansour who has personally executed 6 aid workers and journalists over the past 2 years. Eliminating him serves dual purpose, saves the hostage, and removes a high-value target. What is the extraction plan? Elena asked. You will move immediately to a secondary position approximately 2 kilometers from the shooting site, Morrison said. Helicopter extraction will occur from that location within 20 minutes of shot. Speed and precision are essential. Once you fire, every hostile in the area will be searching for you. Understood, sir. One more thing, Morrison said, his expression serious. This mission is black. No official record, no recognition if successful, no support if you're captured. You will be operating in sovereign territory without permission or acknowledgement. If something goes wrong, the United States government will deny any knowledge of your presence. Elena had expected as much. Special operations meant accepting risks that went beyond conventional military service. I understand, sir. Morrison looked between Elena and Wright. You two represent the best chance this hostage has of surviving the next 48 hours. An entire interagency effort has been working to create this opportunity. Do not waste it. That night, Elena packed her gear for the mission. The specialized rifle, the ballistic computer, the environmental sensors, all the equipment that would help her make an impossible shot in impossible conditions. She thought about the hostage, a man whose name she did not know, whose face she had only seen in grainy surveillance photos. A civilian who had traveled to a war zone to help people and was now paying for that compassion with his life. Unless she could make a shot at 3,600 meters that most snipers considered beyond human capability. Wright found her in the equipment room, making final preparations. You ready for this? Elena looked at her new partner. As ready as I will ever be. How about you? Wright grinned. I have been waiting for a mission like this my entire career. A chance to do something that matters, that saves a life, that proves what we are capable of. Yeah, I am ready. They flew out at midnight, inserting via helicopter into a landing zone 10 kilometers from the target area. The movement to their shooting position took 6 hours of brutal mountain hiking, carrying equipment that weighed almost as much as Elena herself. But she kept pace with Wright, proving that size mattered less than determination. As dawn approached, they established their position on the ridgeline overlooking the valley where the compound sat 3,600 meters away. Elena set up her rifle, checked her equipment, and began the process of calculating every variable that would affect the shot. Wright scanned the compound through her spotting scope. Guards are on routine patrol, she reported quietly. No indication they suspect our presence. Intel says they will bring the hostage out approximately 30 minutes after sunrise. Elena settled behind her rifle and found the compound in her scope. The courtyard where the execution would occur was clearly visible despite the extreme range. All she needed now was patience and the opportunity to take the shot that would prove, one final time, that the impossible was just mathematics waiting to be solved. The sun rose slowly over the mountain peaks, painting the valley in shades of gold and amber. Elena had been in position for 3 hours, her body adjusted to the discomfort of remaining motionless behind her rifle. Wright lay beside her, scanning the compound through the spotting scope with patient focus. Temperature is 52 degrees and rising, Wright reported quietly. Wind is variable, currently 7 miles per hour from the northwest, but expect that to shift as the sun warms the valley floor. Barometric pressure holding at 28.94. Elena made notes in her data book, calculating how the changing conditions would affect bullet trajectory at 3,600 meters. At this extreme range, even minor shifts in environmental variables could mean the difference between a successful hit and a catastrophic miss. Movement in the compound, Wright said. Multiple hostiles emerging from the main building. Count as 6 armed individuals plus 2 unarmed. Elena found them in her scope. 6 fighters carrying AK-47 rifles were moving into the courtyard. Between them, supported by 2 captors, was a man in civilian clothes. He was thin, clearly malnourished, and moved with the uncertain gait of someone who had been imprisoned for weeks. Target identification, Elena said. Can you confirm the hostage matches description? Wright studied the figure through her scope. Affirmative. Caucasian male, approximately 40 years old. Matches photos of Michael Chun, the aid worker reported missing 6 weeks ago. He appears alive, but in poor condition. One of the fighters was setting up a video camera on a tripod, while others forced the hostage to his knees in the center of the courtyard. A 7th man emerged from the building, taller than the others, and carrying himself with the confidence of a leader. He wore traditional clothing, but moved with military precision. That is Khalid Mansour, Wright confirmed. Target is confirmed in the courtyard. Elena centered her scope on Mansour. He was approximately 3,612 meters away, based on our laser rangefinder reading. The elevation differential put him 847 feet below her position. Wind in the valley was creating visible dust devils, indicating turbulent conditions that would affect bullet flight. She began her final calculations. Bullet drop at this range would be over 1,100 inches. The wind would push the round significantly off course. Temperature differential between her position and the target area would affect air density and therefore drag on the projectile. The Earth's rotation would create Coriolis drift. Every variable compounded the difficulty. Mansour began speaking in Arabic, his voice carrying across the courtyard. The camera was recording. This was the propaganda video, the public execution designed to terrify and intimidate. Elena had perhaps minutes before he drew the knife that would end Michael Chen's life. Wind is gusting, Wright reported. 9 miles per hour now, shifting between northwest and north. Recommend holding for steadier conditions. How long until conditions improve? Elena asked. Unknown, Wright said. Could be minutes, could be an hour. But the longer we wait, the more risk that the situation changes. Elena watched through her scope as Mansour pulled a long knife from his belt. He held it up to the camera, the blade catching sunlight. Michael Chen's head dropped forward in what might have been prayer or simply resignation to his fate. I need to take the shot now, Elena said. Wind or no wind, we're out of time. Wright hesitated only a moment. Understood. Wind call, is 7 miles per hour from 320 degrees. Temperature differential is significant. Make the shot count. Elena made her final adjustments to the scope, compensating for every measurable variable. But at 3,600 meters, some factors could only be estimated. She would have to trust her instinct, her experience, and the thousands of hours she had spent learning to read conditions that instruments could not measure. She settled into her shooting position, feeling the rifle become an extension of her body. Her breathing slowed to almost nothing. Her heartbeat became audible in her ears, a steady rhythm that marked time in fractions of seconds. Through the scope, she watched Mansour raise the knife above his head. Michael Chin remained on his knees, his hands bound behind his back, waiting for death to arrive. Elena placed her crosshairs on Mansour's center mass. At this range, aiming for a headshot would be foolish. She needed the largest target area possible. Her finger moved to the trigger, applying pressure with the steady increase she had practiced 10,000 times. The rifle fired. The recoil drove into her shoulder as the 750 grain bullet left the barrel at 2,810 feet per second. Elena kept her eye in the scope, watching the vapor trail arc across the valley. The bullet would be in flight for nearly 5 seconds, an eternity measured against a falling knife. She watched Mansour's blade begin its descent toward Michael Chin's neck. The bullet continued its flight, dropping in a parabolic arc that crossed thousands of meters of air. Time seemed to slow, each fraction of a second stretching into infinity. The bullet impacted Mansour in the upper chest, just below his collarbone. He jerked backward, the knife flying from his hand as he collapsed onto the courtyard stones. The other fighters scattered in confusion, looking around wildly for the source of fire that had come from nowhere. "Confirmed hit," Wright said, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Target down. Hostage is mobile." Through her scope, Elena watched Michael Chin struggle to his feet and run toward the compound wall. The confused fighters were firing their weapons randomly, unsure where the threat was coming from. One of them grabbed for Chun, but missed as the aid worker ducked through a doorway into one of the buildings. "We need to move," Wright said. "Extraction is inbound, but we have 2 kilometers to cover in rough terrain." Elena broke down her rifle with practiced speed, securing each component in her pack. They moved quickly from the shooting position, following a pre-planned route that would take them to the extraction point while staying below the ridgeline and out of sight from the compound below. The 2-kilometer movement took 18 minutes of hard running across mountain terrain. Elena's smaller size actually proved advantageous in navigating the rocky ground, her lower center of gravity providing better balance on unstable surfaces. Wright kept pace easily, her seal training evident in her efficient movement. They reached the extraction point with 2 minutes to spare. The helicopter appeared moments later, dropping into the small clearing in a controlled descent. Elena and Wright boarded quickly, and the bird lifted off immediately, banking away from the target area. Inside the helicopter, Wright keyed her radio. "Command, this is Delta II. Mission successful. Target eliminated. Hostage is mobile within compound. Recommend immediate follow-up to extract hostage while hostiles are disorganized." "Copy Delta II," came the response. "Ground team is inbound to your previous target area. Stand by for confirmation of hostage recovery." The flight back to the task force compound took 40 minutes. Elena sat in silence, processing what she had just accomplished. A 3.612-meter shot under combat conditions with a hostage's life hanging in the balance. The longest confirmed combat shot she had ever made, and possibly one of the longest in modern military history. Wright caught her eye and grinned. "That was the most impressive piece of shooting I have ever witnessed, and I have worked with some of the best snipers in the world." Before Elena could respond, the radio crackled again. "All stations, this is command. Hostage has been recovered by ground team. Michael Chun is alive and in friendly custody. Mission is a complete success." Wright let out a whoop of celebration that was echoed by the helicopter crew. Elena allowed herself a small smile, feeling the tension of the past 24 hours finally begin to release. Back at the compound, Lieutenant Commander Morrison met them on the landing pad. He waited until they had dismounted before speaking. Outstanding work, both of you. That shot just saved an American life and eliminated a terrorist who has murdered 6 innocent people. The intelligence value alone justifies the entire operation. He gestured toward the operations center. There's someone who wants to speak with you. Inside, a video screen showed Michael Chun in a military medical facility, cleaned up and receiving treatment, but clearly alive and coherent. When he saw Elena and Wright enter, his expression shifted to something between gratitude and disbelief. "You are the ones who made that shot?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "They told me someone eliminated Mansour from over 3.5 kilometers away. I did not believe it was possible." "It was possible," Elena said simply. "And you are alive. That is what matters." Chen's eyes filled with tears. "I was convinced I was going to die. I had made peace with it. And then Mansour just fell, and nobody could understand what happened. And I had a chance to run. You gave me my life back. We were just doing our job," Wright said. "But we were glad you were safe." After the video call ended, Morrison led Elena and Wright to a small conference room. Inside were several other officers, including a 2-star General Elena did not recognize. The general stood as they entered. "Staff Sergeant Reyes, Chief Wright, I am Major General David Thornton, Commander of Joint Special Operations Command. I have been following your careers with great interest, particularly yours, Staff Sergeant Reyes." He gestured for them to sit. "What you accomplished today represents a new threshold in long-range precision engagement. A 3.612-meter combat shot with a hostage's life at stake. That is not just exceptional marksmanship. That is a capability that changes how we think about denied area operations." Elena remained silent, uncertain where this was leading. "I am here to inform you that you are being recommended for the Silver Star for your actions today," Thornton continued. "Additionally, your previous Bronze Star for the Zarif mission is being upgraded to a Silver Star as well. Your cumulative performance over the past 2 months represents some of the most exceptional sniper work in modern military history." He pulled out a folder and set on the table. "I'm also offering you a position as a senior instructor at the Special Operations Sniper School. You would train the next generation of long-range precision shooters, passing on the techniques and mindset that have made you so effective." Elena felt the weight of the offer. Teaching meant leaving operational deployment, meant stepping back from the missions that defined her identity as a Marine. But it also meant shaping the future, ensuring that other shooters could achieve what she had achieved. "Sir, may I have time to consider the offer?" Elena asked. "Of course," Thornton said. "Take a week. Think about where you can have the most impact. But understand that operators like you are extraordinarily rare. Your knowledge and experience are too valuable to risk losing in combat when they could benefit hundreds of future operators." After the general left, Wright looked at Elena with mixed emotions. "That is a huge honor. Senior instructor positions usually go to people with 20 years of experience, not someone who has been in special operations for less than a month." "I know," Elena said, "which is exactly why I need to think carefully about it." That night, Elena sat alone in her quarters holding her father's marksmanship medal. She thought about his career, his dedication to the fundamentals, his willingness to pass on what he had learned. He had never sought glory or advancement beyond serving well and teaching others to do the same. She thought about Martinez recovering from her wound in Afghanistan, about Davis learning marksmanship fundamentals that would serve him throughout his career, about Michael Chun alive tonight because she had made an impossible shot at an impossible distance. The math never lied. But maybe the math was not just about ballistics and wind drift and bullet drop. Maybe it was also about multiplying impact, about teaching 10 people who would teach 100 more, about legacy that extended beyond any single trigger pull. Elena placed the medal back in its pouch and lay back on her bunk. Tomorrow she would give General Thornton her answer. Tonight, she would simply rest in the knowledge that she had proven one final time that size did not determine capability. Skill did. Dedication did. And the willingness to take the impossible shot when everything depended on it did. Elena stood before the class of 24 sniper students, all of them staring at her, with varying degrees of skepticism and curiosity. She was the smallest person in the room by at least 8 inches, and she could see the questions in their eyes. The same questions she had faced her entire career. "This is Staff Sergeant Elena Reyes," the school commandant announced. "She will be your primary instructor for long-range precision engagement. I suggest you pay attention to everything she says." He left the classroom, leaving Elena alone with 24 students who had no idea what they were about to learn. She walked to the front of the room and wrote a number on the whiteboard. 3,612. "Anyone know what this number represents?" she asked. Silence. Then a hand rose from the back row. A tall Marine corporal with the confident bearing of someone who had already decided he knew everything worth knowing about shooting. "That is the longest confirmed combat sniper kill in Marine Corps history," he said, "made by an operator whose name is classified. Everyone has heard the story, but nobody believes it is real." Elena smiled slightly. "It is real. I made that shot 6 months ago in mountain terrain at high altitude with variable wind conditions. The target was a terrorist about to execute an American hostage. The shot saved that hostage's life." The room went completely silent. Every student leaned forward slightly, skepticism transforming into intense interest. "Before that," Elena continued, "I made confirmed kills at 3,400 meters while under threat from a counter-sniper team. At 2,950 meters with an unfamiliar rifle under time pressure. And at 3,050 meters in a sandstorm with winds gusting to 18 miles per hour. I'm telling you this not to brag, but to establish that what I am about to teach you is not theory. It is proven technique that works at the absolute limits of what is possible." She walked down the center aisle between the desks. "I am 4 feet 9 inches tall. I weigh 118 pounds. For my entire career, people have looked at me and decided I was too small to be effective, too weak to carry the equipment, too short to see over obstacles, too physically limited to compete with larger shooters." Elena stopped at the front of the room and turned to face them. "Every single one of those people was wrong, and I'm going to teach you why they were wrong, and how you can achieve things that most people believe are impossible." Over the next 6 months, Elena transformed the way the Special Operations Sniper School approached long-range shooting. She introduced new calculation methods for extreme distances. She taught students to read environmental conditions that instruments could not measure. She emphasized the mental discipline required to maintain focus through hours of waiting followed by seconds of critical execution. But more than technique, she taught philosophy. That size and strength mattered less than precision and patience. That ego was the enemy of accuracy. That the best shooters were not the ones who took the most shots, but the ones who made every shot count. Chief Wright visited the school regularly, serving as guest instructor and helping Elena refine the curriculum. Their partnership had evolved into genuine friendship, built on mutual respect and shared understanding of what it meant to operate at the highest levels of their profession. On a cool morning in early spring, Martinez appeared at the school. Her leg had healed completely, and she had been reassigned to a training command where she could pass on her spotting expertise without the physical demands of combat deployment. The two women embraced on the parade ground, genuinely happy to see each other after months apart. "You look good," Martinez said. "Teaching agrees with you." "It feels right," Elena admitted. "Every student who graduates from this program carries a piece of what I have learned forward. The impact multiplies in ways that individual deployments never could." They walked together toward the range where Elena's current class was conducting practical exercises. "Does it bother you?" Martinez asked. "Not being operational anymore? Not taking the shots yourself?" Elena considered the question carefully. "Sometimes," she said, "when I hear about missions that need long-range precision, part of me wants to be there. But then I see students like Corporal Davis, who I taught basic marksmanship fundamentals to in Afghanistan, graduating from this course and deploying with skills that will save lives. That feels like a different kind of victory." Martinez smiled. "Your father will be proud. You know that, right?" Elena touched the small pouch on her vest where she still carried her father's marksmanship medal. I think he would understand why I made this choice. Teaching was always what mattered most to him. That afternoon, Elena received a message that Major General Thornton wanted to speak with her. She reported to his office at the command building, uncertain what this summons meant. Wilholmsen diestil verheer zu seat. Staff Sergeant Reyes, I have been reviewing the performance data from your students. The graduation rate has increased by 18% since you took over the long-range precision course. More significantly, the student scores on extreme distance shoots have improved by an average of 32%. Elena felt pride at the recognition, but remained professional. The students are motivated and talented, sir. I just provide them with techniques that work. You provide them with more than techniques, Thornton said. You provide them with proof that limitations are often self-imposed. That conventional wisdom about what is possible can be wrong. That determination and discipline can overcome physical disadvantages. He pulled out a document and slid it across the desk. I am promoting you to gunnery sergeant, effective immediately. Additionally, I am appointing you as the Director of Advanced Sniper Training for all Special Operations Forces. This will give you authority to shape curriculum across all service branches, not just the Marines. Elena stared at the promotion order, processing what it meant. This was recognition beyond anything she had imagined when she first joined the Marines. Sir, I am honored. Thank you. You earned it, Thornton said simply. Now go make sure the next generation of snipers is even better than you are. 6 months later, Elena stood on a stage at the Marine Corps Base Quantico, receiving her second Silver Star in a ceremony attended by senior officers from across the military. The citation recognized her cumulative achievements in combat and her exceptional contribution to special operations training. In the audience sat Martinez, Wright, Corporal Davis, who had recently been promoted to sergeant, and even Major Cassidy, who had traveled from his new assignment specifically to attend. Each of them had played a role in her journey, had supported or challenged or taught her in ways that shaped who she had become. After the ceremony, Cassidy approached her. Congratulations, Gunnery Sergeant Reyes. Your father would have been incredibly proud to see this day. Thank you, sir, Elena said. And thank you for pushing me to prove myself. The challenges you presented made me better. Cassidy smiled, something genuine and warm. I presented challenges because I was afraid. Afraid that snipers could not be trusted. Afraid that tragedy would repeat. But you taught me that fear-based leadership creates limitations, not safety. You changed me as much as I challenged you. That evening, Elena sat alone in her office at the training school, reviewing lesson plans for the next course cycle. On her desk sat her father's Purple Heart, now displayed in a frame alongside her own medals. The silver stars caught the light, their ribbons bright against the dark wood. Her phone buzzed with a message from Wright. Heard about your promotion. Drinks tonight to celebrate? Elena smiled and typed back. Absolutely. You buying? The response came immediately. For the woman who made a 6-12-meter shot to save a hostage? I will buy all night. Elena stood and walked to the window overlooking the training ranges. Tomorrow, 20 new students would arrive, each of them carrying their own doubts and dreams. Some would be tall, some short. Some would be strong. Some would rely on technique over power. All of them would face challenges that seemed impossible, and she would teach them what her father had taught her. That size did not pull the trigger. Discipline pulled the trigger. Precision pulled the trigger. The willingness to attempt what others believed was impossible pulled the trigger. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The mockery at Forward Operating Base Chapman. The impossible shots in sandstorms and mountains. The confrontation with Cassidy and the revelation of old wounds finally beginning to heal. The transition to special operations and the rescue of Michael Chun. Each challenge had seemed insurmountable at the time. Each had been solved through mathematics, discipline, and the refusal to accept that her size defined her capability. Elena picked up her father's marksmanship medal and held it up to the light. He had given her the fundamentals. The Marine Corps had given her the opportunity. Martinez and Wright, and even Cassidy in his own way, had given her the challenges that refined her skills into something exceptional. Now she would give back. Every student who graduated from her courses would carry forward the knowledge that limitations were often illusions, that the impossible was frequently just a calculation waiting to be solved, that dedication and precision could overcome disadvantages that seemed insurmountable. The sun was setting over the training ranges, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Elena watched the light fade, thinking about all the shots she had made and all the shots still to come. Not from her own rifle anymore, but from the rifles of students she would train. Each of them a multiplier of impact, a carrier of legacy, a proof that her father's lessons could transform not just one Marine, but hundreds. She returned to her desk and began reviewing the personnel files of her incoming students. Among them was a young woman, barely 5 feet tall, who had scored exceptionally on marksmanship fundamentals, but had been told repeatedly that she was too small for sniper training. Elena made a note in the file. Assigned to advanced instruction immediately. High potential for extreme range work. The math never lied. Size did not determine capability. And the next generation of impossible shots was waiting to be made by Marines who would prove, just as Elena had proven, that skill and determination mattered more than height or strength, or any other arbitrary measurement that people use to define limitations. Elena closed the file and smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new students, new opportunities to prove that the impossible was simply another word for not yet accomplished. And she was ready. If you enjoyed this story, please drop a comment and let us know your favorite part, character, or if you have had a similar situation happen to you before where you proved doubters wrong through skill and determination.